Chapter 659. Ding Meng really wasn't making wild guesses. Gong Luo was tiptoeing like a thief. Many people noticed that Gong Luo's feet were stepping on the surface of the swamp, but he didn't sink. This proved that this guy had the ability to walk on water. No wonder he chose such a scene. Su Xia reacted. This Gong Luo was a light speed type, so he was probably good at sneak attacks and assassinations. Chao Bai, on the other hand, was eating the beauty as if no one else was around. He didn't have time to care about anything else and didn't even raise his head. As Gong Luo continued to get closer, the private rooms gradually quieted down. Everyone held their breaths. The distance between the two parties was less than 20 meters, and 2 minutes had already passed. Su Xia also felt inexplicably nervous. Looking at the situation, the probability of Gong Luo's sneak attack succeeding was as high as 80%. She really couldn't understand why Ding Meng would bet on Chao Bai. She also knew that Ding Meng had 13 billion in his hands. If she lost the first round, she would be directly eliminated. At this moment, Gong Luo had already climbed onto a treetop and was quietly curled up among the leaves. In the darkness, only a pair of shining eyes could be seen, just like a ghost in the night. Chao Bai was still eating, still trembling, and his body was spasming. It seemed like he had reached the peak of his life. At this moment, there was a rustling sound from the treetop. A cold light flashed in midair. The sharp kukri blade almost split the air, faintly changing shape. The speed was so fast that it was frightening. The sharpness of this blade was something that even Ding Meng and Su Xia couldn't do as an origin ability user. Not only was it fast, but it was also accurate, vicious, and vicious. The blade was aimed at Chao Bai's back, and the tip of the blade seemed to be trembling slightly. It was obvious that there was a follow-up move. Unexpectedly, the body in the swamp suddenly rose from the ground. The blade flashed again, and the beauty's body was split into 2 halves. Blood burst out in the air. The blade's momentum became even stronger. It felt as if Gong Xiao had split open the corpse and then slashed Chao Bai's waist with a backhand. However, the reality was that after the flash of the blade, Gong Xiao quickly retreated and flipped back onto the tree trunk. Chao Bai, on the other hand, grabbed another shivering beauty and hugged her as he sat on the ground and began to shake rapidly again. Su Xia finally saw clearly that Chao Bai's fierce and sharp attack had been blocked by the corpse. When he was about to make a second strike, Chao Bai, who was in the quagmire, had his hands on the ground and his legs kicked back. This posture was extremely strange. However, Steel Drum did not dare to receive the attack. He quickly retreated and waited for an opportunity to launch a second sneak attack. Originally, in Su Xia's eyes, Gan Sun was an active hunter in the forest, and Chao Bai, who was playing with women, was a fox stealing food. But now, the picture had changed. Gan Sun, who was entrenched in the tree, was like a highly nervous wolf, and Chao Bai, who was on the ground, was like a tiger feasting. Su Xia sighed. This is snatching food from tiger's mouth. Ding Meng said leisurely, "You don't understand wolves. Wolves are the most cunning animals. They won't attack with all their might unless they are absolutely sure." Su Xia came to a sudden realization. No wonder the Gallop retreated so quickly. Ding Meng nodded and said, "He still has a chance, but not many." Sure enough, the Gallop's eyes kept flashing as he clung to the tree trunk. He did not understand why Chao Bai would choose to ignore him. Time passed second by second. After quietly observing for a minute, Gallop suddenly made his move again. This time, he swooped down like a fighter jet. The grass and sand on the ground were all swept up by the momentum. This strike was much stronger than the previous one. Chao Bai still used the same old trick. He suddenly threw the beauty in his arms. The beauty screamed in pain in midair and broke into 2 halves. This time, Gallop did not stop. The blade continued to move forward. Chao Bai, who was sitting on the ground, twisted his body. His entire body turned into a C shape, and the blade missed. Su Xia said in surprise, "The biochemical faculty?" Ding Meng nodded. Only the biochemical faculty could twist their bodies like this. When the kukri blade missed, Chao Bai's body suddenly straightened. His chest hit the blade. With a loud clang, the kukri blade fell out of Gallop's hand. He was shocked and chose to retreat again. After flipping in the air, he landed on one knee. His eyes were filled with shock. Ding Meng sighed. He originally had a backup plan, but now he doesn't have a chance. Su Xia glanced at the big screen. For minutes had passed. There were less than 50 seconds left until the 5-minute mark. At this moment, there was not a single woman alive in the forest. They had all been played to death by Chao Bai. Chao Bai suddenly clapped his hands and laughed. His savage laughter made one's scalp tingle. "Come here." Chao Bai beckoned Gallop with his finger. Gallop frowned. He did not understand what Chao Bai meant. Chao Bai sneered. "Do you know? Actually, playing with men is much more fun than playing with women." Hearing this, Su Xia could not help but retch. This was truly a pervert among perverts. Gallop did not suspect that Chao Bai was joking. He let out a low growl and shot out like an arrow. Halfway through, he threw out both his palms. Rays of light appeared on the ground. It turned out that many sharp blades had appeared in his palms. This was his killing move. Puff, 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 puff. Chao Bai did not dodge. Instead, he rushed toward the blades. Blood immediately flowed out from all over his body. The two collided head-on. Chao Bai moved later, but arrived first. With a crack, he broke both of Gallop's wrists. Then, he twisted his hands and dragged Gallop to the ground. Angel shouted excitedly, F***CK him! F***CK him for me! Gallop, who had fallen to the ground, did not give up. He kicked his right leg backward. Unfortunately, Chao Bai grabbed his ankle and threw him. The tall and strong Gallop could not withstand Chao Bai's throw. He flew 4 or 5 meters and smashed into a tree trunk. There was another crack. This sound was painful. Needless to say, Gallop's waist was broken. Chao Bai, who was naked, walked forward with a hideous smile. He pressed Gallop under his body and began to shake again. Su Xia could not stand it anymore. This kind of scene was unbearable to those who did not have strong willpower. Fortunately, the big screen had already shown the result. Number 7-1. Time, for minutes and 58 seconds. Xiao Miao immediately turned on her wristwatch. Congratulations, Mr. Wolf. You guessed the result of this match. This is your refund. Please accept it. Ding Meng's wristwatch made a notification sound. A total of 30 billion star coins were returned to his personal information card. At this moment, all the eyes in the private rooms were focused on this side. Most of them were envious. If they had known, they would have followed the trend and bet on the result in 5 minutes. However, there was no medicine for regret now. Everyone had bet on Gallop. Who knew that Gallop would be so weak? Su Xia also looked at Ding Meng curiously. How could his eyesight be so accurate? However, she did not open her mouth to ask. Xiao Miao was here, and Ding Meng would definitely not say anything. In fact, she did not know that when Gallop and Chao Bai entered the arena, the telekinesis vision had detected that their origin ability index was about the same. Gallop's fierce eating of meat was normal, but Chao Bai's fierce playing with women was too abnormal. After a careful scan, Ding Meng found that Chao Bai's body contained a highly toxic poison. It was certain that it was a poison that devoured the world. Moreover, there was more than one type. One of them was the strange flower ice powder that he had seen in the private room of the entertainment city yesterday. It had hallucinogenic and aphrodisiac effects. He could not identify the other types of poison, but he could imagine that this Chao Bai was definitely a freak cultivated by Angel. Normally, he would be fed with poison to ensure that his origin ability index did not exceed 3,000. However, his combat ability could suddenly erupt, and he was much stronger than ordinary origin ability users. Without these poisons, Chao Bai would definitely not be Gallop's opponent. Therefore, most people had bet on Gallop. The problem was that the odds for Private Room 1 were on Chao Bai's victory. This proved that Yuan Zhengqing's eyesight was not ordinary. Thinking of this, Ding Meng glanced at the private rooms again. Everyone was talking and laughing. Only Shengzhi's face was obviously not looking good, because Su Xia had won another 20 billion for no reason. At this moment, the list of the second match was out. Number 8, Giant Tiger, vs. Number 7, Chao Bai, 1-2. 3, 20% of the prize pool. This bonus was not paid by the banker, but 20% of the total bet of the gamblers. In other words, if you bet on Chow Bai and Chow Bai won, you could take 20% of the total bet on Giant Tiger. The reason why Chow Bai could continue to be challenged was because there was a medical cabin in the backstage of the contestant area. Therefore, contestants could quickly recover from injuries and continue to accept challenges. The sponsor of Private Roommate was also a tall and strong man. He had a big pipe in his mouth and looked very confident. Because of the last match, everyone now had a direct comparison target for this match. At least everyone knew how powerful Chow Bai was. Therefore, when the odds came out, almost everyone bet on Giant Tiger. The reason was very simple. Even the banker did not think Chow Bai had a chance of winning. Ding Ming glanced at it. Angel had bet another 3 billion on Chow Bai, but the lowest bet of the others was 8 billion. The handsome man in Private Room 5 had actually bet 10 billion on Giant Tiger. In total, the bets piled up in the venue had exceeded 40 billion. Su Xia could not help but ask, "Who is guest number 8? Xiao Miao introduced. Guest number 8 is Mr. Zhang from the Norse Empire. The central venue changed again. This time, the elevator changed the venue back to an open space made of alloy steel plates. It was really empty. Then, the door of Area 8 opened. Su Xia finally knew why everyone bet on Giant Tiger. It was because a giant at least 4 meters tall walked out of the door. This was comparable to the soldiers of the Steel Main Empire. This giant tiger's body was terrifyingly huge. It was like a mountain of meat. It felt like his fists were bigger than Chow Bai's entire body. His whole body exuded a heavy aura. This was an origin ability user of the steel system. Su Xia could not help but be shocked. If the body of an origin ability user was so huge, this Chow Bai was probably doomed. Sure enough, this time, Angel did not throw a woman in for Chow Bai. Chow Bai stood at the door of room 7 and frowned at the mountain of meat on the opposite side. Ding Ming was the only one who hadn't been escorted yet, so everyone's attention was drawn to her. Xiao Miao said, "Miss Su, Misson wants to talk to you." Su Xia nodded, "Connect." Chapter 660. As soon as the voice connection was opened, Angel was very direct. "Old lady, bet on Giant Tiger. Bet more." Su Xia frowned. She didn't understand what the other party meant. Fortunately, Angel was already replying, "Bet more. All the more dividends later, aha." She actually had such an idea. Su Xia was very angry, but at this time, Ding Ming extended his wrist to Xiao Miao. "I bet 10 billion on number 7. When everyone's bets were displayed on the big screen in the center, Mr. Yu couldn't help but look over. His gaze was somewhat dissatisfied. Su Xia's bet was clearly aimed at him. The match soon began. This round wasn't like the previous one. Both sides started fighting as soon as the match started. Giant Tiger roared and rushed toward Chow Bai. This guy charged like a big ball rolling toward Chow Bai. Its momentum was so fierce that it made the ground tremble. Chow Bai didn't face the attack head-on this time. He quickly dodged to the side. Giant Tiger's 2 hands formed a fist and slammed it on the ground. The steel plate on the ground seemed to be a little deformed. Seeing that the attack didn't hit, Giant Tiger quickly turned around and continued to attack. Dong, dong, dong. The muffled sounds in the arena didn't stop. However, Chow Bai's movements were very agile. He dodged left and right like a monkey. No matter how fierce Giant Tiger's attack was, he just didn't take it. In fact, everyone present could see that Giant Tiger was an authentic tough-type origin ability user. Every part of his body had hardened skin, especially his exposed hands and feet. His skin looked like a tree bark covered with moss. Forget about punches and kicks. Even ordinary swords and knives couldn't pierce through it. Su Xia also understood why Giant Tiger chose this kind of open terrain. Because there was no shelter, Chow Bai could only rely on his body to dodge. However, dodging here and there wasn't a solution. Sooner or later, he would be hung up and beaten. In the blink of an eye, the two had been fighting back and forth for 5 minutes. In fact, Giant Tiger was chasing Chow Bai and hammering him. Ding Ming suddenly said, "There's not much time left." Su Xia suddenly realized that the stamina of an origin ability user was limited. He couldn't last long. especially when Giant Tiger kept attacking. This was a waste of energy. Suddenly, Giant Tiger's two fists slammed down again. Chow Bai, who had been forced into a dead end, couldn't dodge and could only face the sky with his palms. Boom! From afar, Chow Bai looked like a wild monkey. Above him was Buddha's five-finger mountain pressing down. Although Chow Bai caught the opponent's iron fist, his waist was pressed down. Su Xia turned his head and said, "I'm afraid this guy's finished this time." Ding Ming shook his head and said, "You're wrong. The real battle has just begun." As expected, although Chow Bai caught Giant Tiger's iron fist, Giant Tiger's right foot suddenly kicked forward, landing on Chow Bai's stomach. Chow Bai was sent flying as though he had suffered a destructive blow. His back slammed into the iron wall with a bang. Puff! This kick was full of strength. Chow Bai was actually shaken to the point of spitting out a mouthful of light green blood mist and softly slid down the wall. Seeing this, Giant Tiger was overjoyed. It roared and rushed forward again, continuing to smash down with its fists. If Chow Bai was hit this time, he would probably be turned into a pancake. Just as Giant Tiger raised its arms, Chow Bai made the same strange posture as he did in the previous match. His hands were on the ground, and his arms suddenly exerted force. His whole body bounced up from the ground. Not only did he dodge the punch, but he also bounced on a Giant Tiger's shoulder and directly pounced on Giant Tiger's face. Giant Tiger's head was about the same size as Chow Bai. It felt like Chow Bai had rammed his head into it. Suddenly, Giant Tiger raised its head and let out an earth-shattering howl. When Su Xiao looked at it, she couldn't help but want to vomit again. It turned out that Chow Bai hadn't really rammed his head into it. Instead, he had grabbed Giant Tiger's head and fiercely bit down on its eye. Then, with a tug, Giant Tiger's left eyeball was bitten off. After landing on the ground, Chow Bai ate the eyeball in a few bites. He chewed it with relish, and the people in the surrounding private rooms cheered. After Giant Tiger was hit, Chow Bai bounced up again. In midair, he used a difficult martial arts technique, 7 stars ghost kick. In an instant, he kicked 7 or 8 times, each of them landing on Giant Tiger's face. When he landed again, Giant Tiger's huge body also crashed to the ground. However, Giant Tiger's face was a mess of flesh and blood. It was impossible to see its original appearance. The screen in the center of the room lit up with the words, "Number 7 wins." Su Xia said in surprise, "Giant Tiger is a tough type. It lost just like that?" The guests in the other private rooms also had doubtful expressions. Didn't the banker make a judgment too early? In fact, there was no need to look anymore. Chow Bai was already riding on Giant Tiger's neck, fiercely smashing, clawing, tearing, biting, and biting at Giant Tiger's head. He was simply attacking like a wild beast. Not long after, Giant Tiger's brain juices flowed out. Ha 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 ha! Angel in room 7 laughed arrogantly. "Kill him for me. When we get back, I'll reward you with a dozen beauties." Su Xia couldn't watch any longer. He could only turn around and pick up a drink from the coffee table. Because Chow Bai was whipping the corpse again, Giant Tiger was no longer in human shape. Ding Ming couldn't help but sigh. In fact, he had seen this kind of scene many times before. In order to compete for ores and nutrient solutions, workers in the mining area would sometimes fight and bite each other like wild beasts. Some were even fiercer than wild beasts. However, although Chow Bai looked fierce, he was actually very sinister. Only Ding Ming knew that Chow Bai couldn't fight Giant Tiger head-on. He had bitten Giant Tiger's eyes because Giant Tiger's eyes were its only weakness. When the eyeball was bitten, Chow Bai injected poison into Giant Tiger's body, causing it to lose its ability to move. Finally, Chow Bai killed it. If one ignored Chow Bai's origin ability index, Chow Bai didn't look like a lecherous rib at all. He was clearly an experienced combat expert. No wonder Angel was so arrogant. Chow Bai was indeed a strong opponent. However, Ding Ming had made 23 billion in this round. Because he and Angel had bet on Chow Bai, they had received 2 billion in dividends. Now he had a total of 2 billion in his hands. Lan Bing was indeed the CEO. Her investment was very effective. Since someone was happy, there must be someone who was angry. It seemed that Misty was also talking to Angel. Mr. Yu's face was full of anger, while Angel still had an indifferent expression. Not long after, the third round subtitles finally appeared. Number 5, Love Night, vs. Number 7, Chow Bai, 1-1. 3, 10% bonus from the prize pool. The venue hadn't been changed. It was still an empty space. However, after the fifth gate was opened, a tall girl with an S-shaped figure walked into the venue. At this moment, almost all the men squinted their eyes because this female contestant called Love Night was really too seductive. She had a devilish figure, and from top to bottom, she was only wearing a one-piece black gauze hanging dress. Unexpectedly, she did not wear any undergarments, revealing all the places that should not be exposed. This alone was enough to tempt people. However, she was wearing a big black mask that covered her face completely. This gave people a strong visual contrast. The reason was simple. If a beautiful woman in revealing clothes passed by in front of you, you would probably stare at her key parts. However, if she was fully dressed, you would stare at her face. This was the case for Love Night. Almost all the men present had the same thought. I wonder how this beautiful woman looks like. Judging from those twinkling eyes, it shouldn't be bad. However, the odds were thought-provoking. Which side should they bet on? Angel sneered disdainfully. What's the use of these fancy tricks? The first number refreshed on the central screen was her heavy bet, 10 billion on number 7. She was obviously confident in her player, so she took the lead. The other guests were not to be outdone. Almost no one bet less than 10 billion. They all bet on Chow Bai. No one thought that such a beautiful woman could defeat the vicious Chow Bai. Mr. Yu's mouth also showed a cold smile. Naive, Shang Zhe asked, Mr. Yu, how much are you going to bet this time? Mr. Yu sneered. I'll bet 30 billion on our own. 5 minutes to defeat this monkey. Shang Zhe was stunned. This meant that he was going to bet extra. Soon, the central screen showed new numbers. Number 5, 30 billion on number 5. Time limit, 300 seconds. Additional 15 billion. Yuan Jingqing's extra odds were thought-provoking. According to the current bet, if Mr. Yu won, the banker could earn 10 or 20 billion at most. Now, room 3 had not bet, so Su Xia's bet was very important. Su Xia turned to look at Ding Meng, asking for his opinion. Unexpectedly, Ding Meng asked, Can I forfeit this round? Xiao Miao explained respectfully, Mr. Wolf, according to the rules, forfeiting a single round requires a compensation of 2 billion. Because both sides brought their own players, they have to pay for the management and operation of the fighting arena and the players' appearance fees. 2 billion it is. Ding Meng did not care. Anyway, he could win. 2 billion was just a drizzle. The result was soon revealed. Seeing Su Xia forfeit, the audience was in an uproar. Didn't you guess correctly every round? How could you forfeit this time? What the hell are you doing? Actually, many people thought about it. Su Xia had already won 50 billion in the fighting arena. Tonight, she was already a big winner. If she continued to win, Yuan Zhongqing's face would not look good. Forfeiting now was nothing more than giving face to the Hubol's family. Su Xia could not help but ask, Are you really going to forfeit this round? Ding Meng smiled. What do you think? Su Xia said, But the banker's odds are 1-1. 3. Ding Meng said, The banker is definitely not trying to scam his customers. The odds he gives are based on the strength on paper, but no one can be sure of the actual result. Su Xia understood. What he meant was that this round was not Ding Meng giving face to the other party, but that even Ding Meng himself could not guess. Could it be that both sides were evenly matched? But looking at Room 5's bet on the screen, she did not know if Mr. Yu was blindly confident, or was victory in his hands. Chapter 661. Ding Meng definitely had a reason to forfeit, because after the start of the third round, there was an abnormal situation. The two contestants were steady and did not make a move. That Love Night was like a statue, quietly standing in the same place without moving. Biren Chao didn't move, but his eyes were darting around. It was obvious that he was wary of this woman. Since she was a contestant, she wasn't a simple woman. Half a minute later, an exciting scene appeared. Love's Knight slowly walked to the back of the wall and openly lifted the black veil covering her lower body. She also placed her hands on some key parts of her body. Then, she raised her head and moaned. Su Xia couldn't help but blush when she heard the sound. For Chao Bai, who was lustful, how could he stand this kind of erotic stimulation? However, although he was fanatical, he was still very vigilant. He slowly moved toward Lianyi. Lianyi kept twisting her body, looking at him with blurred eyes, as if telling him, "Come on, come on." The distance between the two was less than 20 meters. Lianyi finally seemed to be unable to hold on, and her whole body convulsed. Chao Bai decisively rushed out, and in a few steps, he was in front of Lianyi. He pressed this beautiful woman to the ground, and then began to moan and move. The guests in the surrounding private rooms were suddenly amused. This was a large-scale live-action scene. Although they had seen this kind of thing many times, this was the fighting arena. Could it be that Mr. Yu had specially sent Chao by a beautiful woman to perform for everyone to see? Angel had been cold and silent. At this moment, she could not help but turn to look at private room number 5. She saw a cruel smile on Mr. Yu's lips. Not good. Angel immediately shouted, "Come back." Unfortunately, it was too late. Chao Bai was moving happily, but he immediately felt a sharp chill drilling into his lower abdomen, like a poisonous snake entering his body. He felt very strange. Wasn't he conquering this powerless beauty? Why did it seem like he had been conquered? Suddenly, the beauty slipped away from him like a slippery fish. When he looked down, his legs were covered with a layer of ice. In everyone's eyes, the lower half of Chao Bai's body had been completely frozen by the blue ice layer. Everyone suddenly realized that Lianyi had deliberately lured Chao Bai over to use this simple and abnormal method to inject ice source energy into Chao Bai's body. It would be strange if you could run away after being hit by such a dirty trick. This was also the reason why Ding Meng couldn't figure it out. He had observed the ice energy in Love's body, but he didn't expect it to be such an embarrassing method. It was obvious that Love Knight had studied Chao Bai thoroughly beforehand. Chao Bai was a biochemist and had a certain degree of self-recovery ability. He was definitely good at fighting for a long time. Secondly, his leg techniques and body movements were quite outstanding. Thus, freezing your legs was equivalent to winning half the battle. "Bitch!" Chao Bai roared and stood up. However, at this moment, Lianyi no longer had the slightest bit of coquettish demeanor. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Suddenly, she waved her palm high into the air. A light blue airflow was faintly discernible in the air. This was the standard ice annihilation palm. Chao Bai couldn't dodge, so he could only take it head-on. The wind from the palm slammed into his hand, and his entire arm was covered in a layer of frost. When almost everyone thought that Lianyi was going to use the 3-layered waves of the Yangtze River, Lianyi decisively opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of air. In the air, 9 bright stars formed a square and covered Chao Bai. It could be said that the front, back, left, right, and top were all sealed. Upon closer inspection, the stars were actually small, delicate steel needles. They were like prickles that pierced into Chao Bai's palm, completely sinking into it. Chao Bai finally revealed an expression of pain. Unfortunately, another wave of wind from the palm slammed into him. This time, it was the Yangtze River's 3-layered waves. 3 waves of wind from the palm slammed into his entire body, forming an icy blue bubble of origin energy that completely imprisoned him. Misty yelled, "Hurry up and get rid of him. There's not much time left." Love Knight suddenly turned around. The black gauze dress she was wearing suddenly left her body and spun towards Chao Bai, as if it was putting on a woman's clothes for Chao Bai. Chao Bai was still desperately trying to unfreeze his origin energy when Love Knight suddenly appeared in front of him. She reached out and grabbed the sash of her dress. The large screen in the center of the room immediately refreshed. Number 5 wins. What's going on? Everyone looked at each other. 5 seconds later, Chao Bai slowly collapsed. Yes, everyone was sure that their eyes weren't playing tricks on them. Chao Bai's body had been cut into dozens of pieces by Love Knight's black gauze dress. His entire body was like a building block, slowly collapsing. There was only a pile of rotten flesh on the ground. There wasn't even a drop of blood, because all the blood had been frozen by the ice element. Ding Ming sighed. There were a lot of black metal threads in her dress. Just a tug would have been enough to kill him. Su Xia sighed. There's a knife on top of the word lust. Ding Ming didn't answer. He knew that Xiao Bai hadn't died entirely because of his lust. When Love Knight was doing something indescribable by herself in the corner, his telekinesis vision had observed a trace of micromolecules emitting from the hem of her dress. Although Ding Ming didn't know what kind of powder these micromolecules were, as soon as they spread out and entered Xiao Bai's nose, the origin in Xiao Bai's body began to spin violently. The effect of the strange flower ice powder was multiplied, causing Xiao Bai to lose his mind. Strictly speaking, this Love Knight was fighting poison with poison. At this moment, Angel seemed to be in a voice call with Mr. Yu again. Angel seemed to be cursing madly, while Mr. Yu revealed a happy smile. This was because he had earned 45 billion. All the money he had lost before was now returned with interest. This fighting arena was not only perverted and cruel, but the contestants all had dirty tricks up their sleeves. It was really impossible to guard against them. Can Wild King deal with her? Su Xia took the initiative to ask. Actually, this was a question she already knew the answer to. When she was selecting contestants in the preparation area, Su Xia had sensed Wild King's aura. Wild King's aura was close to that of an advanced origin ability user, but there was nothing special about him. Although the thermal and ice element were mutually exclusive, this Love Knight's foundation was even deeper than Giant Tiger's. Judging from his strength on paper, Wild King's chances of winning were less than 40%. However, Ding Ming replied in a deep voice, yes. Oh, Su Xiao was surprised and happy. Ding Ming's mouth revealed a strange smile. If I say he can, then he can. 5 minutes later, the fourth round's information was refreshed on the central screen. Number 3, Wild King, vs. Number 5, Love Knight. 3, 2, 1, 25% of the prize pool. All the eyes in the private rooms fell on Ding Ming and Lan Zhan. Some were surprised, some were sympathetic, some were suspicious, and some were gloating. This was because Xiao Miao had already explained that in this round, besides Ding Ming's team, using the local contestants provided by the Huber's family, the other 7 families had brought their own contestants. This was because the other 7 were all regulars of this place and had never chosen contestants from the preparation area. These odds and dividends were enough to show how difficult it would be for Wild King to win against Love Knight. In the end, Shangzhou was only taking advantage of Ding Ming's team because it was their first time here. It was impossible for them to bring their own contestants. First-time guests who came to the fighting arena for the first time had all paid their tuition fees and had been taught a lot. There was no exception. However, the net worth of these guests was frightening. Losing tens of billions was child's play for them. Ding Ming, however, was different. If he made a mistake, he would be doomed eternally. If he lost all of Lan Bing's money, with Lan Bing's personality, it would be strange if she didn't find trouble with him. In private room 5, Shangzhe laughed again. Young Master Yu, I invited that woman. This is her first time here. She's a nouveau riche. You'll definitely win this round. Young Master Yu said proudly, continue. Bet 30 billion on my little knight. In fact, the others were even faster than him. The bets for private rooms 2, 4, 6, 8, and 9 were all displayed on the big screen. They were all 30 billion. It seemed that everyone had the same idea. They knew that this was a welfare game that would only earn them money and not lose them. Then, the bets on the big screen changed again. Number 3, 20 billion on number 3. Time limit, 60 seconds. Additional 30 billion. What the F***CK? What was going on? Everyone was shocked. Had the newcomer in private room 3 become so arrogant? No one in the preparation area had ever dared to bet more than 10 billion on a player. 20 billion was unheard of. It was fine if you bet 20 billion, but you also had a time limit of 60 seconds. In other words, you wanted Wild King to defeat Love's Knight within a minute. Were you crazy about money? Angel's voice call was connected to private room 3 again. Old woman, don't say that I didn't warn you. This Love's Night is definitely a newcomer. Do you think you have too much money? This time, the person who answered was Ding Ming. That Xiao Bai of yours is too stupid. This time, not only did I help you vent your anger, but I also helped you earn money. There's no time to explain. Hurry up and get in the car. If you miss this, there won't be a next time. After saying that, he hung up. Angel, who was in private room 7, was stunned. Logically speaking, Wild King was definitely not a match for Love's Night. However, from Su Xiao's previous bets, at least this person had never lost. Now that he was bragging so loudly, could there be some inside story? Someone beside her reminded her, "Miss, we're the only one left. Do you want to bet?" Angel said, "Let's take a look first." The door to Area 3 opened. Wild King, who was dressed in ragged clothes, slowly walked out. He first looked at Private Room 3 in surprise. Then he walked to the center of the arena and sat down cross-legged. He closed his eyes and began to rest. Just by looking at his appearance, it was hard to tell what was wrong. However, Wild King had a weapon on his waist. From the appearance, it looked like a dagger or wrist blade. The weapon was hidden in a black sheath. "Miss, are we going to forfeit this round?" someone beside her asked. Angel impatiently interrupted. "Forfeit? What rights? I've never known what forfeiting is when I play in the arena." "Then who are we betting on?" That person continued to ask carefully. Angel said angrily, "Throw in 10 billion and bet on Wild King winning." That King dog, Yulong, killed Xiao Bai, who I spent so much effort training, and let Wild King CK that be TCH called Love's Night. "Miss, Wild King is in the preparation area. Please reconsider." Angel became even more impatient. "Who should I bet on? Do I need you to teach me? How big is 10 billion? You people have been following me for the whole day. You don't know anything." Chapter 662. When Love Night entered the arena, she was dressed differently from the previous round. She had changed into an elegant white uniform, which looked like a female Navy uniform. She also wore a square hat on her head. She also took off her black mask, revealing a cold and delicate face. However, Wild King was still sitting cross-legged on the ground with his eyes closed. It was as if he had no intention of looking at his opponent. Everyone felt that Wild King's behavior was reasonable. How did Xiao Bai die in the previous round? Wild King must have seen it clearly on the screen in the contestant area. If Love Night were to perform some kind of action, no man would be able to resist. The match had not officially started yet. Love Night slowly walked forward, revealing a charming smile. "Why don't you dare open your eyes? Are you afraid of seeing me? Am I that scary?" Her voice was very coy and delicate, like a young girl acting coquettishly in front of you. Under normal circumstances, it was hard not to be attracted to her. However, this time, it was Wild King who had turned into a statue. He sat on the ground without moving. At this moment, everyone finally felt that something was wrong. This Wild King was a little too calm. Su Xiao also felt the same way. However, she felt that the cross-legged Wild King was more like Ding Ming. She had trained with Ding Ming before, so she knew about Ding Ming's habit. She turned her head again and saw Ding Ming standing by the window, staring at Wild King below. His gaze was very focused. Soon, the central screen displayed the words "Go." The match had officially begun. Wild King looked as if he had fallen asleep. He continued to meditate like an old monk. Lian Yi leisurely walked forward a distance and continued to smile charmingly. "Do you want to see my true face?" This time, Wild King finally opened his mouth. "No." Love Night was surprised. "Oh, why?" Wild King's eyes were still closed. "I'm not interested in a person's face. I only want to see their breasts and thighs." Love Night giggled. "So you're the same as Xiao Bai. You want to do that kind of thing to me?" Wild King said, "Yes. Let's see if you have the guts to take it off." They were all ruthless people, so they didn't waste time talking nonsense. Love's Night slowly unbuttoned her shirt and unzipped her pants. This time, she was wearing undergarments inside. The small black undergarments set off her snow-white, smooth skin. In this fighting arena full of male hormones, it had a fatal attraction. Even though Su Xia was a woman, she still had the urge to rush up and ravage this body. Wild King said calmly, "Unfortunately, I can't see clearly." He held his breath as he spoke, because Lien, you must have released a mixture of toxins when she took off her clothes. However, the toxins smelled especially fragrant, as intoxicating as the body fragrance of a beautiful woman. Love's Knight blinked and smiled. "You don't even open your eyes. How can you see me?" Wild King said, "It's too dark and my eyesight is not good. Besides, what I want to see is not clothes, but meat." Lien Yu raised her jade-like hand and gently hooked her finger. "You want to eat meat, but don't get up. Are you waiting for me to come over?" Wild King said, "That's right. Let's see if you have the guts to come over." The confrontation between the two caused the atmosphere to become even more erotic. However, the guests in the private room did not feel that it was exciting. This was because the logic was there. Love was an ice element user and was not good at close combat. On the other hand, Wild King was a heat element user and was not good at long-range attacks. Love's Knight was not a fool. She could take off her clothes, but she could not get too close to Wild King. She had to maintain a distance of about 50 meters. Once he got close, it would be disastrous. Su Xia felt a wave of nervousness. The time on the screen was passing second by second. 28 seconds, 29 seconds, 30 seconds, 31 seconds. Love's Knight let out a string of bell-like laughter. "You men are really useless. You want to play with me, but don't dare to take the initiative to come over. You're not even as good as that Chow Bai. At least he dared to do me." Wild King said, "You don't dare to come over?" Love's Knight laughed and said, "You're the one who doesn't dare." Wild King hesitated. "You want me to come over?" Love's Knight laughed. Come over." Wild King said, "Okay." As soon as the word "okay" came out of his mouth, Wild King's eyes suddenly opened. A cold light flashed through his eyes. Suddenly, Wild King jumped up from the ground. His body spread out in the air, like a swallow breaking through the waves. His movements were extremely smooth. At the same time, Wild King raised his right arm, forming a hand blade. Su Xia finally understood what was wrong. This was clearly Ding Meng's ultimate move. It was fine if he did not make a move, but once he made a move, he would take his opponent's life. Moreover, the hand blade was covered in a faintly discernible mass of colorful air. It was like a sphere that did not dissipate. This was the heat element's 5-colored eternal flame technique. In reality, this was a type of origin energy field. However, because the origin energy user's level was low, he could not release origin energy like a warlord or warlord. Love Knight was already prepared for this. She threw out 3 consecutive palms in the air. Everyone could clearly see the light blue aura of the annihilation of ice palms. They saw Wild King's 3 consecutive palms cut through the air. Pong, pong, pong. 3 explosions rang out. With each explosion, the colorful air around Wild King's hand dimmed until it disappeared. However, Wild King was not affected at all. Like a cannonball, he rushed in front of Love's Knight. This speed was comparable to the speed of light. Love's Knight did not expect that her opponent would not be affected by the black ice annihilation palm. In this moment of crisis, she spat out a mouthful of air. The shining steel needle hit Wild King's face. It felt as if Wild King had delivered himself to her. Unexpectedly, Wild King's reaction was godly. His entire body shrank, and his head dived downwards. He actually managed to squeeze on her love's crotch. Then, he rolled on the ground. After rolling a few times, his feet kicked off the ground, and his entire body miraculously flew back. It was the iconic carp leaping over the dragon's gate, followed by a backhand blade. Love's Knight had already turned around, raising her palm to block. Unfortunately, she was wrong this time. When Wild King turned around, there was a short sword in his hand. The tip of the sword cut into her wrist, and blood immediately spurted out. Wild King landed on the ground. His left hand grabbed Lien Ye's wrist, while the tip of the dagger in his right hand started to move upwards from Lien Ye's inner wrist. It moved along her arm, cutting through the tendons of her forearm, the tendons of her elbow, her biceps, and her shoulder blade. Her arm was completely cut open. Finally, with a crisp sound, the dagger cut through her neck. Pooh! Fresh blood sprayed high into the sky like a fountain. Lianya's head had already fallen to the ground, and the headless corpse fell down, spraying a bloody mist. From the beginning of Wild King's attack to the end, he did not make any unnecessary movements. He did not waste any energy at all. It was as smooth as flowing water, clean and tidy. One move was all it took to kill him. The big screen in the center immediately refreshed with the caption, "Number 3 wins." Time, 58 seconds. Everyone was dead silent. Only Angel was laughing crazily. "Ah, well done. Beautiful, beautiful. Hey, why don't you F*CK her? Go F*CK her. If you F*CK her, I'll give you 50 million bonus." Impossible, impossible. Yulong's face became as pale as a corpse. Actually, anyone with a bit of insight could see that although Wild King's origin ability index was about the same as Lian Ye's, Wild King's combat experience was too rich. He had completely used excellent combat techniques to kill his opponent. However, this method of killing was too skillful. If one's hands were not stained with hundreds of lives, they would definitely not be able to achieve such a godlike effect. Su Xia turned her head to look at Ding Ming. At this moment, Ding Ming had already turned around. He happily picked up a few dried fruits and threw them into his mouth, chewing loudly. Su Xia had an idea in her heart. This was definitely Ding Ming's trick. How could a low-level origin ability user be so cruel? It was definitely Ding Ming who had cheated on Wild King. Her guess was not wrong. When Wild King had entered the room, he had looked at room 3 with a strange expression. It was because Ding Ming had used the assimilating heart art to transmit a message to Wild King. He had told Wild King to circulate his origin ability and then sit in the center of the room without caring about anything else. After that, Ding Ming had secretly released telekinesis particles. Of course, he could not directly inject origin ability energy into Wild King. That would be discovered by other experts. He directly wrapped the telekinesis particles around Wild King's body. To put it bluntly, Ding Ming was simply controlling Wild King's movements from afar. Otherwise, how could Wild King have been able to execute such elegant moves? This was why everyone felt that Wild King had rich combat experience. It was because he was a miniature version of Ding Ming. How could a mere Lianyi challenge an opponent like Ding Ming? Wouldn't that be asking for a quick death? Thus, Wild King had been following Ding Ming's instructions the entire time. Even the dialogue had been taught by Ding Ming. The only things he needed to pay attention to were 2 things. One was to hold his breath and not breathe. The other was to use the 5-colored eternal flame technique to block the airflow from the black ice annihilation palm. This was all up to Wild King himself. F*CK your mother. Didn't you say that you were the one who invited that woman? And it's her F*King first time here? And she's a F*King nouveau riche. F*CK off. In room 7, Yulong kicked Sheng Zhou in the stomach. You with the surname Sheng, get the F*CK out of here. You F*King tricked me. F*CK off. Sheng Zhou really wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Yulong had just won some money, but he didn't dare to refute. This young master, you had a special status and a shocking background. He was definitely not someone he could afford to offend. It could even be said that the entire Huber's family didn't dare to offend him. This round, Su Xiao was undoubtedly the biggest winner. She received a huge sum of 94 billion, and Angel took the meat. The other 5 families lost a total of 180 billion. Of course, although the bankers lost Ding Ming and Angel, they still received more than 10 billion. Ding Ming now had 150 billion in capital. Lan Bing's investment had increased tenfold. Angel's call came in again. Hey, Wild Wolf, and this old lady, thank you so much. Let me introduce myself. I'm Angel, and I'm from the Angel family of Angel from the Star Warrior Oasis of Norxing Empire. Let's have some tea when you're free. Xiao Miao immediately stepped forward. Mr. Wolf, Misson just transferred 10 billion to us through Mr. Yuan. She said that this is to express her gratitude. Please accept it. Ding Ming nodded. Although this angel was a little arrogant and perverted at the same time, she was quite particular. He could get to know her. Chapter 663. The information for the fifth match did not appear for a long time. This was because all the private rooms seemed to be communicating with each other. Yulon's expression was extremely ugly. This was because Love of the Night was the same as Chow Bai. They were both players that were not easy to nurture. In the end, Wild King had cut off their heads. He could not take this line down. Furthermore, Su Xia's bets were against him. Not long after, Xiao Miao's wrist device received a message. She took the initiative to say, "Miss Su, Mr. Wolf, Mr. Yuan is requesting call." This was the leader of the Hubol's family initiating the call. Su Xia quickly replied, "Please connect." Soon, an old voice sounded on the screen. "Miss Su, Mr. Wolf, congratulations. You have achieved impressive results on your first visit to the combat arena. Congratulations." "Thank you," Su Xia replied politely. Yuan Zhengqing said, "As our best customers, I have a suggestion. Would you be interested in hearing it?" Su Xia said, "Please speak." Yuan Zhengqing said, "There are only 4 contestants left. Contestant number 3 performed outstandingly in the previous round. The remaining 3 contestants do not seem to have much chance of winning if they challenge him alone." Ding Meng narrowed his eyes. "Mr. Yuan, do you have any good suggestions?" Yuan Jingqing's tone became serious. "Yes, I personally suggest that tonight's combat arena entertainment ends here. If the 2 of you agree, you only need to pay a termination fee of 70 billion and you can leave. I will personally be responsible for the safety of the 2 of you in Nanling City." This 70 billion was a sensitive number. Why? Because this was half of Ding Meng's winnings tonight. Yuan Zhengqing clearly had accurate statistics. His words could be understood as, "If you give up half of the winnings, I can guarantee that you can leave this place safely." Su Xia's face darkened. Her gaze swept across the other private rooms. Even through the crystal glass, she could feel that most of the guests in the private rooms had ended their calls and were staring at her. She quickly realized that the 70 billion was not what the banker wanted. It had something to do with Yulong and the others. Apart from Angel, Yulong's losses were relatively small. However, the other guests' losses were huge. None of them had won a single bet tonight. In total, they had lost at least 200 billion. They were definitely unwilling to accept this. However, they also felt that this was Su Xia's first time here, and she didn't have a powerful background. Thus, they wanted to make up for their losses from her. Su Xia sneered, "I can understand it as the banker seeing me win so much. So he's jealous?" Yuan Jingqing's tone was very calm. "Miss Su, you should know the rules of the 7 Stars Fighting Arena. We, the organizers, will never harm the interests of our customers. However, every customer is a high-quality customer and is also our honored guest. We will try our best to satisfy all of our customers' legitimate requests." Ding Meng suddenly said, "What if I don't agree with this suggestion?" Yuan Zhengqing said, "I personally prefer the principle of protecting the interests of the guests and maximizing the benefits for everyone. I advise Mr. Wolf to follow my advice. After all, you are a little weak." Yuan Zhengqing was just short of saying that the other guests had amazing backgrounds. Sharing some of their money to buy their own safety would not offend them. You might even be able to get on their good side. After all, it was not a loss. There was still 70 billion in the bank. That was a sky-high amount of wealth that ordinary people would not dare to imagine in a few lifetimes. "What if I insist?" Ding Meng's confidence rose. "All right." Yuan Zhengqing's tone was a little helpless. "If the 2 of you insist, then according to the rules, you will have to accept the VM agreement, which will be tonight's last match." The so-called VM agreement did not have much to do with the banker. It meant that the remaining 3 contestants would team up to challenge Wild King. The guest that the contestants belonged to would have to pay for the match. Whoever won in the end would take away all of the bets on the field. This seemed a little unfair, but if Ding Meng accepted it, he would be the one to decide the basic bets. Ding Meng could not help but laugh. It seemed that these people were not convinced. Today, he would make them accept their loss. Sure, Ding Meng took the initiative to answer. What if someone loses the last match and refuses to accept the bet? Yuan Zhengqing said, "Thank you for your support and acknowledgement of the rules. The two of you can rest assured that the situation you are worried about will not happen. The 7-star arena's rules have been maintained for over 100 years, and no one has ever broken them. Ding Ming turned off his communicator and turned on his wristwatch. He said to Xiao Miao, "I'll go all in. 150 billion star coins on Wild King winning." Now that there were 3 challengers, the difficulty level had increased by more than 3 times. If 150 billion was the basic bet, then the guests who bet on the challengers could not bet less than 3 times the basic bet, which was 450 billion. Seeing that Ding Ming's personal information had been transferred in 150 billion, Xiao Miao felt her small hands tremble slightly. She had worked here for 2 years, and she had never seen anyone who dared to accept an VM agreement between customers. Not only was Ding Ming the first, but the amount of money involved was also terrifyingly large. In Xiao Miao's memory, the largest bet here had a total of 380 billion, but this time, it was likely that it would break the record for a 7-star casino. New words quickly appeared on the large screen in the middle of the arena. Number 2, Mad Demon. Number 4, Tian Shu. Number 6, Jinkai. vs. Number 3, Wild King. Final round, hedge agreement. Number 2, 450 billion. Number 4, 450 billion. Number 6, 450 billion. To be honest, just these 4 families alone had invested 1.5 billion in this final round. Whoever could get a share of the profits would wake up laughing in their sleep. Thus, the words continued to refresh. Number 5, 450 billion on the challengers. Number 8, 450 billion on the challengers. Number 9, 450 billion on the challengers. It seemed like everyone was certain that Ding Ming would lose this final round, and the possibility of him losing was indeed very high. This was because no matter how well Ding Ming controlled Wild King's movements, against 3 opponents of the same strength, the chances of him winning were very small. In fact, it could be understood this way. This was equivalent to Ding Ming as an origin ability user facing off against 3 Julie at the same time. One could imagine how difficult it would be. Now, only Angel's family, number 7, was left. Even though Angel had always been rich, she still fell into deep thought when faced with such a huge bet. "Miss, should we forfeit?" the attendant beside her carefully asked. Angel was rather impatient. "Forfeit? You only know how to forfeit. Forfeit, 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 forfeit. This is called seeking fortune amidst danger." The attendant clearly did not understand. "Miss, what do you mean?" Angel slammed her palm on the coffee table. "Whether we live or die will depend on this final round. 150 billion on number 3. If we win, everyone will be rewarded. If we lose, we will return to the Empire tonight and not come to planet Beidou for a year." It was not that she had confidence in Ding Ming, but rather that her gambler's mentality was playing tricks on her. The challengers had invested a total of 2.7 billion, and she had invested 450 billion on the challengers. If she won, then according to the ratio, she would get 21 billion. Winning was certain, but it would not be fun. However, if she invested 150 billion and bet on Ding Ming, then that would be crazy and exciting. What if that old woman was lucky enough to win? That way, she would be able to split the 2.7 trillion gold coins on the other side with number 3. That would be a total of 13.50 trillion gold coins. Such a decisive move, superhuman foresight, and astonishing strategy would be something she could brag about for years in front of her friends in the Empire. Please call me Angel Gao Jean. Thus, ordinary people could not understand the thinking of tycoons. She could afford to lose 150 billion, but something like Face required even more courage. Angel was still daydreaming, but she did not know that something new was happening on the screen. Number 1, 150 billion on number 3. F asterisk CK. Angel was a little dumbfounded. Why did an old man like you come in to join the fun? Did he want to dilute her profits? Yu Long and the others looked very upset. Number 1's bet meant that Yuan Zhengqing was more optimistic about Ding Ming's team. However, this was also within the scope of the rules. The banker also had the right to participate in hedging bets. The terrain of the elevator finally changed. The terrain must have been chosen by the challengers. Seeing this terrain, Most people thought that Wild King was going to be in trouble. However, Dingming almost laughed out loud. This terrain was the last thing he was afraid of because it was exactly the same as the reception port of the extreme pirate army on Cypress Goo. There was a blue artificial circular lake, and a cross main passage was built on the lake, which was a steel bridge. The only difference was that there were no office buildings around it. The opponent's idea was quite good. The arena was filled with water, which was the opposite of the thermodynamic element. This was advantageous for them. Even before the contestants had appeared, Dingming had already guessed that one of the 3 challengers would be an ice element. But so what? Did you think that Wild King would use his origin ability to compete with you? The door of the contestant area slowly opened, and 3 challengers appeared at the same time. It was a team of 2 women and 1 man. At the 12 o'clock position stood a tall and muscular man. The alloy gloves on his hands were very eye-catching. This was Mad Demon number 2. The woman at the 3 o'clock position was fair and clean. She wore a beautiful patterned dress and did not look like a contestant at all. This was number 6, Jing Kai. The woman at the 9 o'clock position was number 4, Tian Shu. This person was an ice element origin ability user. Her outfit was even more unique. She wore a short-sleeved shirt and jeans and a pair of black high sandals. Unlike the previous contestants, the last 3 challengers were too clean and too unique. They did not have the violent temperament of the previous challengers. They stood in front of the door and did not look like contestants. Instead, they looked like tourists. Dingming suddenly frowned. Su Xia quickly said, "There shouldn't be a problem, right?" Dingming said in a deep voice, "It's very tricky." "It can't be." Su Xia was shocked. Could it be that cheating was not enough? Dingming seemed to know what she was thinking. He took the initiative to explain. "It seems like there's a gravitational element origin ability user." The gravitational element was one of the largest elements in the origin ability system. If an origin ability user did not take the initiative to attack, it would be very difficult to distinguish between them. It was equivalent to the ice element Tian Shu, the hardness element Mad Demon, and the gravitational element Jing Kai. The 3 of them were working together to deal with the thermal element Wild King. If the 3 of them cooperated well, it didn't matter if Dingming had cheated or not. Wild King would be doomed. Chapter 664. The match soon began. Wild King dashed toward the center of the bridge as soon as he came out of the gate. The reason was simple. Now that there were 3 people challenging him, he had to occupy the key spots first. He could not let his opponents gather together. Since he had this idea, his opponents had it as well. Because Jing Kai and Tian Shu had different origin energy, their speed was not very fast. On the other hand, Mad Demon was the first to rush forward. Right now, Wild King's origin energy had not been fully activated. Mad Demon took large strides forward and did not seem to make any moves. However, just as he was about to reach the center of the bridge, his body leaned forward and his speed suddenly increased. He actually used his shoulder to slam into Wild King. Wild King immediately felt a strong and heavy aura rush toward him. This was the classic brutal charge. Its power was not to be underestimated. Wild King suddenly jumped up from the ground and onto the railings of the bridge to avoid the attack. Mad Demon was like a heavy truck, crashing into a lamppost behind him. The 10-meter-tall steel pipe was immediately broken. Mad Demon pushed out with his palm, and the broken pipe immediately changed direction and flew toward Wild King. The fracture of the steel pipe split open like a sharp blade. Halfway through, it was probably driven by origin energy, and the fracture split open again. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Many stars flew out, and they were all sharp steel pieces. To be honest, it was not easy for a low-level origin energy user to do this. It could be said that this was the limit of an origin energy user's level. From this, one could see that Mad Demon's origin energy was quite deep. Wild King leaned to the side to avoid the pieces of steel and swept out with his leg. The steel pipe immediately bounced back. Wild King did not even have time to check on Mad Demon's situation. Just as he was about to launch a kick, a cold, chilling attack came from behind him. Wild King did not even think about it as he dashed forward. The sharp wind from Mad Demon's palm brushed past his back. Wild King even felt a burning pain on his back. He did not even have to think to know that his back was injured. When he stood up and turned around, Mad Demon and the other two had already gathered at the center of the bridge. They stood side by side and coldly looked at him. Seeing this, Yulong and the others were happy. Although this was just a test, those who knew the ropes could see that Wild King's chances of winning were very small. Su Xia frowned. She didn't know what Ding Meng's strategy was, but there was a bloody gash on Wild King's back. He had been injured by Tian Shu's annihilation of Ice Palm. At this moment, Mad Demon attacked again. He raised his hands high and pounced. Judging from his posture, it was clear that this person was really good at close combat like jiu-jitsu. Wild King did not dare to take the attack head-on. He jumped around the railings on both sides of the bridge. The lighthouse was broken one by one, and the steel pipes fell into the water. The scene that Su Xia and Angel were most worried about finally happened. Wild King was dodging the Mad Demon's attack, but Jing Kai, who was behind him, slowly left the ground. Her whole body slowly rose into the air, and two balls of invisible air appeared in her hands. At this moment, Su Xia finally knew what kind of ability user Jing Kai was. She was a gravity-type storm type, good at gathering air currents. Wild King's dodging slowed down significantly after the two balls of air hit him. Mad Demon took the opportunity to grab Wild King's arm and throw him over his shoulder. Bang! 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 3 consecutive muffled sounds rang out. On the bridge, 3 light blue streams of air rushed toward Wild King like quicksand. Yulong gasped in admiration. This Tian Shu's annihilation ice palm was much better than Lien Ye's. There was no way to dodge this kind of palm wind. It completely covered the entire bridge. In reality, Wild King did not dodge. The first palm wind looked like quicksand, but when it hit his thigh, it was like a war hammer. With a bang, he was sent flying. The second palm wind arrived, just as expected. It rolled and found its way to his chest. This time, not only was he sent flying, but he also spat out a large amount of blood. However, the third palm wind did not hit him. This was because when he was sent flying, there was a lighthouse next to the railings. Wild King used all his strength to push against the steel pipe, and his whole body barely avoided the attack. Then, he fell off the bridge and landed in the lake with a splash. This time, it was Mad Demon and the other two's turn to be surprised. This guy could have returned to the bridge. Why did he choose to dive into the water? Of course, they did not know how rich Ding Meng's combat experience was. If Wild King had really taken 3 consecutive palm strikes, he would definitely have been imprisoned by the ice element. Thus, he definitely could not take the last palm strike. Why did he choose to jump off the bridge? It was also because Wild King's injuries were not light. His 5 origins were operating at full power, but the origin energy was not flowing smoothly. He could only hide underwater first. Go, what are you waiting for? Go down and kill him. Yulong was so anxious that he stomped his feet. Mad Demon and the other 2 stood by the bridge and looked around. However, there was no sign of Wild King in the lake. This was because Ding Meng's assimilation hard art had taken effect. He used telekinesis to block the 3's senses. The 3 of them were all low-level origin ability users. Their senses were not very strong, so Ding Meng did not need to use telekinesis too much. However, the problem now was how to deal with these 3 people. They definitely could not win in a direct confrontation. Ding Meng, who was in front of the window, narrowed his eyes. Dozens of telekinesis dots floated out. He wanted to carefully scan these 3 opponents and then use Wild King to wait for an opportunity to counterattack. Angel, who was in room 7, was also extremely anxious. Why don't you use the sure kill technique from before? Why don't you use it? In reality, it was not that he did not want to use it, but rather that he did not dare to use it. Ding Meng was confident that he could kill one of them with a single strike. However, once he used it, the other 2 would definitely be able to kill Wild King. From what Ding Meng could sense, Wild King did not have the ability to kill these 3 people in a single strike. He still needed to rely on external forces. 3 minutes later, a dripping wet Wild King quietly climbed up the bridge's steel cable. He was not in a hurry to reveal himself. Instead, he held a broken steel pipe in his hand. What was this kid trying to do? Throw the steel pipe for a sneak attack? Everyone was puzzled. Sure enough, Wild King suddenly threw the steel pipe with all his might. The steel pipe whistled through the air as it flew diagonally. With this kind of force, it would naturally be exposed. The three people on the bridge decisively turned around. Jing Kai, who was in the air, pushed forward with both her palms. The steel pipe immediately slowed down and seemed to be frozen in midair. In reality, her origin energy was not enough to do this. Instead, it was Ding Ming's telekinesis that froze the steel pipe in midair. Taking advantage of this brief moment, Wild King fiercely leaped up. The tip of his foot touched the steel pipe, and his entire body leaped up a second time. His body expanded, and the classic Ding Ming's hand blade lit up. His target was not Berserk or Jing Kai, but Tian Shu, who was on the left flank of the bridge. This was because Tian Shu posed the greatest threat. However, no matter how fast he leaped up a second time, he had exposed his position in advance. This allowed the three people to be prepared. Jing Kai was about to continue attacking when suddenly, everyone felt a strong flash of light from Wild King's wrist. They were stunned for a moment. Wild King's hand blade chopped down. What he chopped down was not a person, but the hilt of his own short sword. This was something that no one had expected. So. The short sword spun in a circle as it flew towards Tian Shu. Childish. The corner of Tian Shu's mouth revealed a trace of disdain. She suddenly put her palms together, and a light blue coating formed between her palms. With a ding sound, the short sword collided with the coating. However, at this moment, Wild King's true body was already in front of her. It looked like he was about to cut her temple. Tian Shu did not panic. She leaned back and took advantage of the momentum to do a backflip. Wild King directly passed over her head. Tian Shu did a backflip on the spot. She spun in a circle before stabilizing herself. Be careful, Berserk Demon beside her warned. This was because Wild King's karate chop had come back at her. This speed was completely beyond her imagination. However, in the eyes of everyone present, this was very reasonable. Wild King's chop had been a feint. His real goal was to use his feet to kick the lighthouse's steel pipe behind her and bounce back. Compared to the rebound from the previous round against Love Knight, his speed this time was faster and the distance was closer. She should not even think about dodging. Tian Shu leaned back again, but this time, her feet were facing the sky. The soles of her black high sandals were very thick. They felt like a lump of iron. Without a doubt, Wild King's hand blade had cut into her sandals. Ding! There was a rapid ding sound. There was another flash of cold light on the bridge. Wild King's ultimate move was blocked once again. He was already sliding backwards on the bridge. However, there was a plop sound beside them. It seemed like something had fallen. Tian Shu and Berserk turned their heads at the same time. The two of them could not believe their eyes. Jing Kai was lying beside them. Her eyes were wide open, as if she had seen something extremely terrifying. However, there was a bloody hole in her heart. Blood was gushing out. It was obvious that her heart had been pierced through by a sharp weapon. Yulong and the others were so shocked that they immediately stood up. No one would have thought that Wild King's real target was not Tian Shu, but Jing Kai, who was in the air. As for how Wild King had done it, only the experts on the scene could see clearly. When Wild King bounced back, he seemed to have predicted that Tian Shu would kick towards the sky. The moment his hand blade hit Tian Shu's sandals, his origin energy jolted out the blade hidden at the bottom of the sandals. The blade flew into the air. This was equivalent to Wild King and Tian Shu attacking together. Jing Kai did not even have time to react. The blade pierced through her heart. It would be strange if she did not die. In other words, Jing Kai had indirectly died at the hands of her companion. Tian Shu was shocked and angry. The blade on the bottom of her shoes was her trump card. She would only use it in a critical moment. How did Wild King discover it? Su Xia secretly laughed. These tricks were like child's play to Ding Ming's telekinesis vision. Now he was happy, right? If you want to play dirty, But in the end, he got played. Bastard. Berserk was so angry that he roared. He turned around and charged towards Wild King on the bridge. This time, they were truly going all out. Once Jing Kai died, they would no longer have an effective defense to slow down Wild King's movements. With one less person, they could not surrender. If the people on the bridge lost all of their billions, they would die 10,000 times. Berserk's arm glowed with a faint yellow light. This was the prototype of an origin steel shield. It was obvious that he was going all out. However, Ding Meng would not give him the chance to do so. Wild King seemed to be charging towards Berserk. Just as the two sides were about to collide, Wild King used the same old trick. His body shrank, and he dove downwards. Like a slippery fish, Wild King slipped past Berserk's legs and rolled towards Tian Shu, who was behind Berserk. At the end of the day, Berserk was just a tough type. The one with the real killing power was still Tian Shu. If Wild King did not deal with the ice type, then he could forget about winning. Chapter 665. As the saying goes, you learn from your mistakes. Tian Shu's reaction was very quick. This time, she wouldn't use any of her ultimate moves. Instead, she would kill Wild King with a single palm strike. She circulated her origin energy and decisively struck out with both of her palms. This palm strike was aimed at the ground because Wild King was still rolling on the ground. In her mind, Wild King was most likely going to use another ultimate move after rolling on the ground. However, this kind of empiricism was truly fatal. Not only did Wild King not jump up, but he even used his back to take the brunt of the steel-like Annihilation Frost Palm Strike. Wild King was curled up into a ball like a dead dog. The palm strike's momentum was extremely strong, and it directly created a layer of frost on Wild King's body. In addition, Wild King was still sliding on the ground in the direction of Berserk, who had returned from the other side of the bridge. How could Berserk miss such a rare opportunity? He seized the opportunity to grab Wild King's waist. His origin steel shield wrapped tightly around Wild King's waist, preventing him from moving. Then, Berserk lifted Wild King's head high into the air. It looked as if he was going to smash Wild King's head into the steel plate on the ground. No one doubted that this smash would cause Wild King's brain to splatter. However, in the next instant, Berserk seemed to have been hit by some kind of magic. He maintained his posture and stood there motionless. With a plop, Wild King fell onto the bridge. It looked like he had suffered a serious injury. Blood continuously flowed out of his mouth. However, Berserk, who had his hands raised high, was unsteady on his feet. He swayed left and right as if he was drunk. After swaying for a bit, he fell heavily to the ground. At this moment, everyone could clearly see that there was a short, pitch-black sword hilt stuck in Berserk's throat. With such a vital point stabbed, it would be strange if he had been able to smash Wild King down. Suxia immediately understood. It turned out that Wild King's short sword had been frozen in Tian Shu's palm. When she had unleashed her final palm strike, the short sword had also been sent flying. Wild King had taken the risk of facing her palm strike head-on and grabbed his own short sword. Then, he slid it towards Berserk, who had returned. The instant Berserk raised his sword, Ding Meng controlled Wild King to easily send his sword into Berserk's throat. Although it sounded easy, it was actually extremely dangerous. If Wild King had missed a single step, he would have been done for. Using such incredible combat skills to kill two strong enemies in succession, the guests in the private rooms all stared with their eyes wide open. What the F***CK? Is this even possible? Yulong sneered, it's useless. You can't escape death in the end. No newbie dares to win money from me. On the bridge, Wild King was like an arrow at the end of its flight. He sat on the ground, panting heavily. His entire body was covered in blood. Some of it belonged to the enemy, but most of it was his own blood. Actually, Ding Meng was also very anxious at this moment. 2 of Wild King's 5 origin points had already been extinguished. Against the unharmed Tian Shu, it was almost impossible for Wild King to win. Even Ding Meng felt that it was unlikely unless a miracle happened. Can you withstand it? Ding Ming transmitted a message with his divine thought. Wild King did not reply. He half knelt on the ground and glared angrily at Tian Shu. However, the remaining 3 origin points in his body were still operating at their maximum capacity. Ding Ming nodded. This guy was really strong. As long as you can withstand it, I'll give you this wealth. Wild King once again rose to his feet. He took a few steps forward before leaping up again. Once again, he used Ding Ming's handblade. However, this time, his speed was clearly slower and his aura was not as strong as before. This was already a final struggle. Tian Shu did not dare to be careless anymore. She also circulated her origin energy at full force. Her jade-like hands gradually began to glow with a faint blue light. She pressed her palms together and gently pushed them forward. Shwa, a faintly discernible mirror image of an ice blade, had already formed in midair. It also spun and sliced towards Wild Wolf. Actually, those who were paying attention could see that although Tian Shu's attack was not a true release of origin energy, the difference was not that great. She was an origin energy user who was about to break through to become a warrior. Strictly speaking, this was not fair. However, she was indeed not a warrior, and this was still within the bounds of the rules. Kacha! A crisp sound rang out. Wild King's knees were directly cut off. He let out a miserable cry before falling to the ground. Seeing this scene, Yu Long and the others finally felt relieved. Tian Shu also lightly sighed. She had already expected Wild King to be strong, but she did not expect Wild King's combat strength to be so strong. He actually managed to kill Jing Kai and Berserk. If she had not been cautious, she was afraid that she would have fallen for Wild King's dirty trick. It's over. Angel fell onto the sofa. She did not feel the pain of losing 150 billion. Instead, she was envious of the trillions that had been lost. The cooked duck had flown away at the final moment. Tian Shu slowly walked forward. She coldly looked at Wild King, who could not move at all. She slowly raised her palm. Kill him! Kill him! Kill him! Everyone began to get excited. Hee hee hee. Wild King let out a series of strange and miserable laughter. Tian Shu frowned. She did not understand how this person could still laugh when he was about to die. Those who signed up for the fighting arena had long forgotten about life and death. Death was just a matter of a moment. There was nothing to be afraid of. At this moment, her eyes were wide open. Jing Kai's corpse was still lying on the ground beside her. Wild King was about to accompany her. Who knew that Wild King's eyes would suddenly become fierce? Tian Shu knew that he was up to no good. She decisively struck her palm towards Wild King's chest. Although Wild King's legs were gone, his hands were still there. His right hand secretly supported himself on the ground as he fiercely rolled to the left. Bang! A loud sound rang out. The steel plate on the ground was directly deformed. This strike was too forceful. It was also because it was too fierce that when Tian Shu missed, she lowered her head and bent over. After rolling a few times, Wild King rolled to the side of Jing Kai's corpse. He used his right hand to punch Jing Kai's stomach. With a pu sound, the sharp blade that was originally embedded in Jing Kai's heart was jolted out. This was a short and exquisite alloy dagger. Its entire body emitted a bright light. Wild King, who was lying on the ground, half turned around and reached out to grab the dagger. He then turned around and threw the dagger out like a dart. Essence. A fatal killer. This was the true final blow. Tian Shu had just retracted her palm, stood up, and turned around when she suddenly felt something cold enter her chest. The origin ability energy in her body immediately stopped circulating. She lowered her head and saw that a large patch of her snow-white t-shirt had been dyed red. She raised her head again to look at Wild King. Wild King was lying on the ground in a state of near death. Tian Shu's eyes were wide open and her mouth was agape. She seemed to be unable to believe this was real. How could a person who was about to die launch such a fierce attack? Soon, Tian Shu's body swayed, and she also fell to the ground. The central screen immediately displayed the final result. Number 3 wins. F***. How is this possible? What's going on? Yulong was dumbfounded. What else could have happened? All of this was within Ding Meng's calculations. Did Wild King really think that he had risked his life to take a hit from Wild King? In order to kill Berserk, he had paid the price of losing both of his legs to make Tian Shu lower her guard. This was all to make her take the initiative to close the distance between them. This was the true gamble. Ding Meng was betting that Tian Shu's ice blade had already exhausted all of her strength. Even if she used Black Ice Annihilation Palm from afar, it wouldn't be enough to kill Wild King immediately. If she really wanted to take his life, she would have to do it herself. However, as long as you dared to come over, you would be heading towards hell. From a moment Jing Kai's corpse fell to this place, his telekinesis vision had calculated every detail. Tian Shu was the one who had to die. What the F***CK? Angel, who was in the private room, jumped up. Wild King had made a comeback. This time, she had made a huge profit. Even if she didn't take into account her losses, she still had 900 billion in her account. Yes, she could brag about it for a few years now. I am indeed Angel Gao Jin. No, I should combine the name of the god of gamblers with my own name. Please call me Gao Ji from now on. In private room 3, Su Xia also heaved a sigh of relief. She knew that there was nothing else for her to do here. She had achieved her goal. Now, it was time for Ding Meng to perform. Ding Meng now had a total of 60 billion in his hands. He was extremely happy. He took the initiative to transfer 10 million to Xiao Miao. This is your tip. Xiao Miao's whole body was trembling. 10 million was equivalent to her salary of 20 years of working here. Ding Meng continued, "Please treat Wild King, and I will give him another 50 million in dividends." "Yes, Mr. Wolf. I will definitely do as you say," Xiao Miao replied respectfully. At this moment, the elevator was replaced with an empty space. At the same time, it rose to the second floor. The crystal glass doors of every private room were already open. It looked like they were inviting the guests outside. Xiao Miao explained, "Miss Su, Mr. Wolf, according to tradition, after every battle, the banker will invite the VIPs to a gathering to have a chat and deepen everyone's friendship." She said it in such a dignified manner. What friendship? There was no time to resolve the grudges and deepen friendship. However, how could Ding Meng not understand the meaning behind this? Winning such a large sum of money was equivalent to attracting a lot of trouble. How could you escape just because you wanted to? There must be something else behind this. Ding Meng smiled. "Don't tell me they are holding a banquet in this arena?" "Of course not," Xiao Miao explained politely. "Mr. Yuan will bring everyone to the Juling Villa through the VIP passage." Ding Meng must have done his homework. The Juling Villa was a reception point for the Hubel's family. It could be said that it was a place where the VIPs who came to Nanling City would meet. Ding Meng said, "It's already very late. Miss Su needs to go back and rest. I will go on behalf of Miss Su." Xiao Miao nodded. "Of course, that's not a problem. I will send Miss Su back to the Star Grand Club." "Mr. Wolf, please." Ding Meng had just entered the arena when someone swaggered towards him from afar. Looking at that person's arrogance, he said, "Brother, you must be Wild Wolf, right?" Ding Meng secretly laughed. This angel looked to be about the same age as him, but she acted like an elder. The key was that this girl did not have any origin energy fluctuations on her body. She was actually an ordinary person. "You're a friend for sure." Angel patted Ding Meng's shoulder casually. "You've helped me a lot today. Don't worry, with me protecting you, no one in Nanling City will dare to find trouble with you." That old lady. "Oh no, where's your boss? Where did that big sister Sue go?" "Boss had something to do and left first. I will attend the banquet in her place." Ding Meng replied without batting an eyelid. "That's fine too." Angel waved her small hand. "Let's go and have a midnight snack together." Chapter 666. The Juling Mountain Villa was built on a hillside in the outskirts of Nanling City. Any building in the Federation that was named after a certain mountain villa would be extraordinarily grand. The mountains in the outskirts were all man-made. Halfway up the hillside, in the lush greenery, an extremely classical mountain villa sat quietly among the greenery. This Jeweling Mountain Villa was different from the Hooting Mountain Villa in Blue Pole Star City. It was not built in the form of a villa area, but was instead built with layers of single-story houses stacked on top of each other using building blocks. One would not be able to tell from the flying car, but when one arrived, one would find that the villa was more like a painting that slowly unfolded on the hillside. Every floor led diagonally to the top of the mountain, and all kinds of entertainment facilities were available. The rarest thing was that the villa was mostly built with limestone. Every piece had been carefully designed to be smooth and flat, complemented by various alloys. In addition to this quiet and unique environment, it was truly low-key and luxurious. Standing by the swimming pool halfway up the hillside and looking down, one could see the brilliantly lit Nanling City in the distance. It was indeed pleasant to rest in this place. Yulong and the others did not speak along the way, while Ding Ming and Angel rode in the same flying car. Although Angel was talkative and had a big tone, she had one good thing about her. She did not ask Ding Ming and Su Xia about their origins. This was undoubtedly to Ding Ming's liking. This girl was a very straightforward person. The group walked up the hill and arrived at the best floor of the hillside. This place was a little like a loft. There was only one floor, but the courtyard was very large. The interior decoration was comparable to the Grand Star Clubhouse. The waitress dressed in a cheongsam was not only beautiful, but also very gentle. Welcome to the Jeweling Mountain Villa. The guest's entourage was arranged to be at the foot of the mountain, so only Ding Meng and the others could enter this place. Yuan Zhengqing's attitude was also very gentle. He took the initiative to extend his hand and said, "Everyone, please come in." Yulong didn't hold back either. He reached out and hugged the two tall and beautiful women in cheongsam. "I'm very angry right now. Help me cool down later." Ding Meng was also speechless. This guy had probably been here many times. He didn't even care that this was a public place. After entering the hall and sitting down, he brazenly touched the two beauties. However, the others turned a blind eye to it, as if they were used to it. A long sandalwood table was placed in the middle of the hall. The table was very short, so everyone was sitting cross-legged on the tatami. Naturally, all kinds of delicious food had been prepared on the table. Anyway, Ding Ming could not name these dishes, but they all had one thing in common, which was big. How big? All the delicacies were served in extra-large, exquisite utensils, which were perfect in terms of color, smell, and taste. Distinguished guests, please take a seat. Yuan Zhengqing greeted everyone. At this table, except for Ding Ming and Angel who didn't have a waiter, almost everyone had their arms around a woman. Yuan Zhengqing glanced at them and couldn't help laughing. "Missin, Mr. Wolf, if you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask." Angel was also a veteran. She directly waved her hand and refused. "No need. What haven't we played before?" "Mr. Yuan, you are too polite." Ding Ming didn't even refuse. He reached out and grabbed a roast chicken and started to eat directly. No matter how beautiful the beauties were, could they be eaten? Looking at Ding Ming's hungry face, Yulong stopped touching the beauties and said with a sullen face, "You're a country bumpkin coming to the city. Don't you know the rules of etiquette?" Of course, he also knew that the people who were invited here were not ordinary people, but he just couldn't calm down and couldn't help but mock them. Unfortunately, Ding Ming didn't care about this kind of thing at all. "You talk, I'll eat." However, Angel was a little unhappy. "Master you, are you a sore loser or a sore loser? Are you a sore loser? Don't you know how to talk?" If anyone dared to talk to him like this, it would be strange if Yulong didn't get angry. However, Angel's status was different, so he didn't dare to lose his temper. "What? You lost money and you don't let others talk?" Angel said, "If you want to talk, talk properly. Why are you being so sarcastic?" "I'm hungry. That's what I mean." Yulong didn't dare to continue arguing. He hugged the beauty next to him and licked her. Then Yuan Zhengqing invited everyone to eat. From time to time, he would greet everyone. Although Ding Ming was eating like crazy, he could see some clues from these people's conversations. Although these guests' identities were not simple, the forces behind them and their respective businesses had to deal with the Huber's family. To put it bluntly, they had to transit on planet Beidou for a long time. For example, guest number 8. Ding Ming could tell that this Mr. Zhang was a material merchant who traveled between the fertile chalk system and the empire for a long time. He provided raw materials for making special antidotes. He had a large number of orders from the military, so it was inevitable that he would come to planet Beidou often. This kind of gambling in the arena wasn't just for entertainment. It also provided opportunities for the guests to communicate with each other. Everyone cooperated with each other and benefited from each other. Of course, this kind of gambling was also quite painful. Like today's gambling, the loser wouldn't be able to recover for at least a year or two. Therefore, everyone was thinking of communicating with each other to make up for their losses. Yuan Jingqing also hinted that he would consider the losers' various operations on planet Beidou and reduce the relevant fees. It's a pity that Boss Su isn't here. I wonder how Boss Su made such a fortune? Mr. Zhang spoke again. Ding Ming had to answer this time. The boss is in the energy mining business. Oh, no wonder. Mr. Zhang sounded a little disappointed. It seemed that Su Xia didn't have much of a chance to cooperate with him. However, after Ding Ming's answer, Yulong couldn't sit still anymore. Haha, mining business? Interesting. Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. Young Master Yu, do you have any good suggestions? Shengzhi said impatiently. Mr. Wolf, you're the biggest winner today. Since Miss Su is in the mining business, I have to remind you that we didn't confiscate your goods. It's young Master Yu who is in charge of this stall. Oh, Ding Ming pretended to be surprised. Young Master Yu is in the upper management of Planet Beidou? Shengzhi had a smug look on his face. Brother Wolf, Long Feiyu's goods are under the jurisdiction of the Big Dipper. They are not allowed to be transported away because the Federation's Starbao Group has already taken over the jurisdiction. You should understand. As expected, the clue of the vital element crystals was directly related to the Starbao Group. Ding Ming looked at Yulong with interest. Excuse me, young Master Yu is from the Starbao Group. Yulong also looked proud. He didn't say anything, but his expression was undoubtedly mocking Ding Ming. Boy, are you scared now? If you want to make a living, you have to listen to me. Unexpectedly, Ding Ming said thoughtfully, I know a few people from the Starbao Group's headquarters, but this is the first time I've heard of young Master Yu. Shengzhi smiled disdainfully. Brother Wolf, if Miss Su's business is really big, why does she need to hire a smuggler like Long Feiyu? That's why you have to brag. Don't say you know people from the Starbao Group's headquarters. Who do you know? Tell me. Ding Ming smiled. Does the transit string count as someone from the headquarters? Shengzhi smiled even more happily. Yes, but she doesn't seem to be in charge of young Master Yu. Ding Ming asked curiously. Oh, Angel couldn't stand it anymore. She whispered in Ding Ming's ear, Brother, Ling Xingwen from the Federation's Starbao Group is Yulong's cousin. He's in charge of transferring some of the Starbao Group's resources on planet Beidou. This guy is just an empty shell. Ignore him. So that's how it is. Ding Ming finally understood what was going on. Why was the residue from Long Feiyu deducted? That was because the Starbao Group didn't allow it. Ling Xingwen indeed had a wide circle of friends. She must have reached an agreement with the Huber's family. This proved that the residue of the true elemental crystals was either not far from planet Beidou, or it couldn't go around planet Beidou. It might even be in a nearby star region. However, the residue could only be considered as inferior goods on the periphery. Relatives like Yulong definitely wouldn't be able to get in touch with the real core. Therefore, Ding Ming blinked and smiled. Fine, fine. We've already won the money anyway. President Su doesn't care about that batch of goods anymore. Isn't it worth 400 billion? Yulong and Sheng's expressions changed. This brat was despicable. Why did he have to rub salt into their wounds? Yulong had indeed lost 400 billion today. Was this amount of money a lot for him? If someone else were to judge this, they would definitely think that the cousin of the Ling family's second miss definitely wouldn't lack this amount of money. However, Ding Ming didn't think so. Although he didn't have much concept of money, he knew that Lan Bing, as the CEO of Lan Yu, had only managed to save 10 billion or so. Meanwhile, Yuanjia's elder sister had borrowed 200 billion from Yuanjia when she wanted to start a galactic combat club. If someone like that needed to borrow 200 billion, it was enough to show how much wealth 400 billion was. Yu Long definitely wouldn't be able to take out 400 billion. The reason was simple. Compared to Yuanjie and his sister, who did you think you were? At least this amount of money probably wasn't Yulong's own. He might have borrowed it from a friend, or it might have been a deficit in the Star Bao Group's internal accounts. Anyway, no matter how it came to be, Yulong was definitely anxious now. Sure enough, Sheng just said coldly, "Brother Wolf, we're all businessmen. We value harmony. No one's money comes from nowhere. Since Miss Su wants to start a mining business, I can make an exception and let Long Feiyu buy the raw materials and leave planet Beidou." Ding Ming was amused. "You're very good at using the word pay." Sheng just said seriously, "This is your chance. You can also gain the friendship between the Star Bao Group and planet Beidou." Ding Ming looked at him with interest. "Then how much do you need me to pay for it?" Sheng's lips curled into a sinister smile. "Not much, only 450 billion. That's nothing to you. How about it? Think about it." This was a classic example of using this as a threat to force Ding Ming to return the 400 billion that Yulong had lost. Ding Ming laughed. 450 billion is enough to buy a ship of Krypton, but you want me to buy back a batch of dozens of ores. May I know what ores they are? SB-250 ores? Chapter 667. Ding Ming's harsh words made Angel unhappy as well. "You talk too much nonsense. If you can't afford to lose, then you can't afford to lose. If you don't have money to play, then don't play. If you want to win back your money after losing, then do it with your own ability." Yulong was a little embarrassed, but he was not convinced. "Missin, we were talking about business with Mr. Wolf. It has nothing to do with you, right?" F***CK. Angel threw the table knife on the table. "Brother Wolf, I'm friends with him. If you're not convinced, then you can try. Yulong had a headache. Then we'll do as you say. Let's win with our own ability." Ding Ming had been paying attention to Yuan Zhengqing the whole time. Yuan Zhengqing had never stood out to speak. Ren Xingzhe was talking nonsense. Ding Ming suddenly realized that Shengzhe was helping Yulong as a henchman, and Yuan Zhengqing had acquiesced to it. Ding Ming sighed, put down his chopsticks, and said, "Thank you for your hospitality, but it's getting late. I'll take my leave." He sighed because every time there was good food to eat, he could not eat to his heart's content. This feeling was really depressing. Angel also stood up. "Brother, I'll walk you down." Ding Ming smiled bitterly. "Forget it. I'll visit Missin again when I have time." "That won't do," Angel insisted. "You owe me a lot today. It's only right that I give it to you." The two of them walked out of the hall and slowly walked down the bluestone path. What a bummer. Angel was very dissatisfied. That Yulong is the biggest bastard. He's always like this. Ding Ming asked curiously. "Have you guys gambled many times?" Angel said, "That's right. I've lost many times this year. In total, I've lost 1 or 200 billion. But luckily, you helped me win it all back today." Ding Ming said in a low voice, "The people of the Hubol's family are so protective of Yulong." Angel said disdainfully, "Who does he think he is? He's just using the name of the Starlight Group to fool around here. Do you think he's rich? He's just an empty shell. I heard that he uses Star Rainbow's internal funds to gamble every time. It's fine if he wins, but if he loses, he'll join forces with Shangzhe and the others to ask the losers for their capital. If the losers don't give them the capital, their business on planet Beidou will be troubled. However, Brother Wolf, don't worry. With me around, they won't dare to make things difficult for you." Ding Ming suddenly smiled and said, "But it's different this time. Not only have they lost a lot, but even with you around, I'm afraid they'll still be in a difficult position." Angel said angrily, "He dares? The Federation and the Imperium have always minded their own business. Besides, does he know who my brother is? He'll be scared to death if he finds out. That's not the point. The point is that you won too." Ding Ming's eyes fell on the helipad at the foot of the mountain as he spoke. Following his gaze, Angel also felt that something was wrong. How many people are there? Where do they go?" Ding Ming's face darkened. He reached out to protect Angel and said, "Missin, don't run around. Stand behind me." All the guest attendants were arranged to stay in the hall at the bottom of the mountain. However, the lights in the hall were still on, but these people were gone. However, the few flying cars on the helipad were still there. A group of men in suits stood there. Ding Ming recognized the leader. He was Sheng's bodyguard at the Starbrand Clubhouse. This man was a warlord, and indeed had the ability to control so many people in such a short time. Seeing Ding Ming coming down, the bodyguard said slowly, "Mr. Wolf, you came down from above. It's better for you to go back up. This is not a place for you to stay." Before Ding Ming could answer, Angel pointed angrily at the bodyguard's nose and said, "Where are my people? Where did they go?" The bodyguard said calmly, "Missin, your subordinates are resting. I promise they're fine." Ding Ming suddenly laughed. "From your tone, it seems that I'm the one who's in trouble tonight." The bodyguard said, "I don't know about that. I only know that whoever offends President Sheng and young Master Yu is in for it." Ding Ming laughed even more happily. "All right, I'd like to see how I'm going to be in for it." The bodyguard did not say anything. He slowly took out a cigarette box from his pocket. This was the signal to make a move. When the 7 subordinates saw the cigarette box, they immediately pounced on Ding Ming. The bodyguard took out a cigarette from the box, lowered his head, and lit it in a very dashing manner. Then he took a deep puff. In his mind, he did not even need to make a move himself. In fact, he did not even need to look. He knew that Ding Ming had already been pinned down to the ground by his subordinates. However, what he heard was Angel's surprised voice. You're an Origin energy user?" Ding Ming laughed and said, "Just so. Did I offend President Sheng or young Master Yu? I don't know. I only know one thing. If anyone offends me, it's going to be fun." The bodyguard turned his head to look. All 7 of his subordinates were unconscious on the ground. Moreover, they had fallen without a sound. He was completely unaware of it. Ding Ming looked at him with a half-smile. "Seeing that you're still civilized, hurry up and turn on your wristband to contact President Sheng. He must still be waiting for your good news upstairs." The bodyguard stared at him. After a while, he suddenly laughed. "I didn't know that Mr. Wolf was actually an expert." Ding Ming laughed and said, "Not only am I an expert, but I can also perform magic." After saying that, he walked straight toward the bodyguard. Angel was also very surprised. Sheng's bodyguard was obviously here to deal with him. However, the bodyguard stood there like a fool, unable to move at all. Of course, she did not know that this was Ding Ming's telekinesis binding. Ding Ming slowly walked up to the bodyguard and easily removed the cigarette from his mouth. "Let me contact him for you." The wristband was turned on, and the call log was opened. The last person he contacted was indeed Sheng. Ding Ming raised the screen directly and aimed the screen at his face. The call was quickly connected. Sheng appeared on the screen with a drunken smile. Everything was as Ding Ming had expected. He thought it was good news. "President Sheng, it seems that your so-called business deal is a direct robbery because you can't reach an agreement?" Ding Ming asked with a smile. Seeing that the person on the screen was Ding Ming, Sheng's drunken state turned into cold sweat. "You? Didn't you?" Ding Ming laughed and said, "Did you think that I was killed by your men?" Sheng's smile disappeared. "What do you want?" Ding Ming laughed and said, "I'll give you 10 minutes to come up with 450 billion. Otherwise, your men are done for." After saying that, he turned off the call. Then, like lightning, he chopped the bodyguard's temple with his hand. The bodyguard immediately collapsed like a pile of mud. Angel clapped her hands and said, "Wow, amazing. I didn't expect you to have some skills." She was an ordinary person, so of course, she could not tell. How could he just have some skills? There was probably no other person on planet Beidou who could knock out a war monarch with a single chop. Ding Ming said, "Missin, your men are in the lobby. They've been knocked out. You can go there." Angel said, "What about you?" Ding Ming revealed a strange smile. "You'll find out soon enough." As soon as he finished speaking, Ding Ming disappeared with a swoosh. Angel was so shocked that she took 2 steps back. Wow, he really knows how to do magic. He disappeared into thin air. This was not a magic trick. Ding Ming was just too fast. She could not see him with her naked eyes. At the same time, Sheng's face was very ugly. Yuan Zhengqing said, "What's going on?" Sheng said, He wants us to pay 450 billion to ransom him. Yuan Jingqing was a little surprised. Shall shout and catch him? Or is that wild wolf not under control? Shangzhe shook his head and said, I don't know. I have to go down and see for myself. Yulong could not understand the conversation between the two. He was laughing with two beautiful women in his arms. Now that he was drunk, he was ready to go to the back room to rest and let the two women serve him. Yuan Jingqing suddenly sighed. There's no need to go. Shangzhe wondered why. Yuan Jingqing's eyes fell on the swimming pool in the courtyard. He's already here. Everyone turned their heads. Under the night sky, the swimming pool glowed with a mesmerizing luster under the illumination of the light. However, Ding Ming's figure appeared like a ghost on the cold chair far away from the pool. It was impossible to see how he got up. Ding Ming also walked towards the lobby unhurriedly. Shangzhe was about to move when Yuan Jingqing pulled him back. Don't act rashly. Shangzhe hesitated. But Yuan Jingqing said seriously, he's not a wild wolf. Shangzhe was surprised. Oh, Yuan Jingqing said, Xiao Xiao is a beginner battle monarch. Even he couldn't control him. A person like this can't be a nobody in the Federal Empire. Let's see what he's here for. At this moment, no one was continuing to eat or drink. Although they weren't origin ability users, at the very least, they still had a discerning eye. Looking at Ding Ming's slow footsteps, they could feel a rather oppressive pressure rushing towards them. Unlike the other fierce men who shouted and yelled, Ding Ming's footsteps were very slow. This didn't mean that he didn't have any killing intent, but rather that he was confident. Even if I let you escape now, would you be able to escape? This was the aura of a big shot. Yuan Jingqing obviously noticed this too. He took the initiative to walk to the center of the yard and smiled politely. Mr. Wolf, do you have any requests? Please tell me what you want. If you don't treat me well, please forgive me. Ding Ming said in a low voice. Those who have nothing to do with this can leave now. The group of people was stunned. What did he mean by that? However, there were many smart people here. Guest number 8, Mr. Zhang, was stunned for a while. He slowly got up and quietly walked to the side door. He could tell that this wild wolf was going to cause trouble in the jeweling villa. He slipped out the side door. Ding Ming did not stop him. His eyes still fell on Shangzhe. Shangzhe felt an inexplicable chill. Guest number 2, 4, 6, and 9 saw that the situation was not good. They carefully walked to the side door. Seeing that Ding Ming did not respond, they immediately walked down the mountain. Now, only Yuan Jingqing, Shangzhe, and Yulong were left in the room. Even the beautiful waitresses had retreated to the inner room. Yuan Jingqing did not intend to be polite anymore. He said seriously, Mr. Wolf, please tell me your real name. Chapter 668. Ding Ming walked out of the pool and slowly made his way to the center of the courtyard. There's no need to ask. It doesn't matter if I know or not. Yuan Jingqing was startled. There were too many implications behind these words, but Ding Ming's aura was truly powerful. Even he couldn't see through Ding Ming's strength because he couldn't sense even a trace of origin energy from Ding Ming's body. Ding Ming said in a low voice, What does the Star Bao group mean by detaining the dregs? Shangzhe and Yulong's hearts sank when they heard him say the word dregs. This was a professional term, and it meant that the other party knew a lot of things. Shangzhe's expression darkened. Wild Wolf, this is the Jeweling Mountain Villa. You'd best be aware of the situation. Do you know who you're talking to? Ding Ming's gaze suddenly fell on Yuan Jingqing. How old are you? Yuan Jingqing was stunned once again. He really didn't understand what Ding Ming meant, but he maintained a high level of vigilance. My nominal age is 320. Ha! Ding Ming chuckled. It's definitely not easy for someone who's 320 years old to become a high-level combat monarch. Even your basic cultivation technique isn't a 5-star one. You've probably been stuck at the combat monarch level for many years already. If something were to happen to you, you wouldn't even be able to cry. Only then did Yuan Jingqing raise his head. His face was filled with shock. His opponent was actually able to see through him. Ding Ming turned to Shangzhe. It seems that you think you're tough because Mr. Yuan is here, right? Shangzhe sensed that something wasn't right. He argued, What exactly are you trying to do? Ding Ming's figure suddenly flashed. Sheng Zhe and Yu Long couldn't see it at all. Only Yuan Zhengqing could see it clearly. Ding Ming's body had already left behind an illusory afterimage as he swept towards Yuan Zhengqing like a ghost. Yuan Zhengqing had also seen Ding Ming's attack in the fighting arena before, Wild King's signature hand chop. At this moment, Yuan Zhengqing felt a suffocating pressure coming from the front. He subconsciously raised his palms to block, but his palms failed to block the hand knife. Ding Ming inexplicably cut his shoulder. Thud! Yuan Zhengqing's right knee hit the ground. Dozens of cracks spread out in all directions like a spiderweb. At this moment, Sheng Zhe and Yu Long's faces were completely drained of blood. Who would believe that Mr. Yuan could not withstand a single palm strike from the other party? Ding Ming looked down at Yuan Zhengqing from above. Did you fail to see through my technique and feel that you were too careless? Yuan Zhengqing, who was still kneeling on one knee, didn't respond. At his age, he had more experience than anyone else. He almost instantly gathered his origin energy and slammed his palm into Ding Ming's stomach. At this distance, he was confident that he wouldn't miss. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. Sheng Zhe and Yu Long were both startled. They saw Yuan Zhengqing's entire body fly backwards, his entire right arm turning into countless pieces in midair. However, Ding Ming was still standing there, completely unharmed. They were used to seeing low-level origin ability users fight to the death in the fighting arena, but they had never seen someone with such frightening strength outside of the arena. Ding Ming hadn't even moved, but he had been able to destroy a battle monarch's entire arm. Yuan Zhengqing lay on the ground. Only he knew how frightening the person standing in front of him was. When he had launched his sneak attack, he had already gathered his origin energy in his palm. As long as Ding Ming dared to take it head-on, he would be able to unleash all sorts of origin energy and martial techniques. Unexpectedly, Ding Ming had only lightly clashed with his palm, causing all of his origin energy to rebound and explode his right arm. This was Yuan Zhengqing's own origin energy, so there was no way he could withstand it. Sheng Zhe finally panicked. He quickly reached out to grab his wrist device, but it suddenly emitted a puff of smoke and broke in half. Ding Ming calmly said, "I don't like to repeat myself. I'll ask you one more time. What is the meaning of the Star Bao Group's actions?" Sheng Zhe gritted his teeth. "Are you crazy? This is the Juling Mountain Villa in Nanling City. Don't think that just because you have a few tricks up your sleeve, you dare to come to the Hubol's clan's territory and cause trouble. You." His voice was suddenly cut off, and his entire body flew into the air. It was as if a pair of invisible hands were strangling his throat. He struggled with all his might. The next moment, his entire body fell into the swimming pool in the distance. Then, he turned into an orange-yellow fireball. He didn't even have time to scream before he turned into ashes. Bang! There was a loud explosion. The fireball exploded, and the pool's surface splashed up dozens of meters. Yulong had never seen such a brutal method of killing someone on a whim. He scrambled toward the backyard. Unfortunately, the faster he ran, the more he realized that he was constantly retreating. In the end, he retreated until he was right in front of Ding Ming. What kind of sorcery was this? Ding Ming laughed coldly. "I didn't expect that your body, which has been hollowed out by alcohol and women, would be so fast." Yulong's expression looked like he was crying. He finally gave up struggling and knelt down with a thud. "Big brother, I was wrong. Can you let me live? I'll give you 450 billion if you spare my life. You're a big shot, so please be magnanimous." Ding Ming said coldly. "Did Ling Xingwen send you to planet Beidou?" Yulong knelt on the ground and cried. "Yes, my cousin asked me to come. She wanted me to be in charge of the fleet's transportation. At the same time, I can't let the residue leak out," Ding Ming asked. "Where did the residue come from?" Yulong was very straightforward. "It was transported back from outer space, from planet Perry number 2. Our Star Bao Corporation's transportation base is there," Ding Ming asked. "Are you in charge?" Yulong hurriedly waved his hand. "No, I'm not. Zhong Huazheng is the one in charge," Ding Ming thought to himself that Zhong Huajing must have teleported to Planet V9 from the base on Planet Perry. The Starry Rainbow Corporation indeed had more than one Tsujing base. Is it a transportation base? Ding Ming continued to ask. This time, Yulong lowered his head and did not say anything. This question was too critical. Ding Ming sneered and said, "Do you think your bones are harder than Shangzhe's?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly covered his crotch and rolled on the ground with all his might. He let out a strange howl like a wild boar. Ding Ming said, "You like beautiful women so much. It's a pity that you won't be able to enjoy them in the future. If you lose all 10 of your fingers, you won't even be able to play anymore." Yulong shouted again. Yes, it's Tsujing Base. Ding Ming asked, "Where's the destination?" Yulong hurriedly said, "All of the Starbao Corporation's bases in outer space can be transported to each other. They can even be transported to the big star vortex outside the fertile chalk system." Ding Ming said, "You have a right to enter, don't you?" Yulong was in so much pain that he could barely speak. He could only nod desperately and say, Yes. Big brother, I was wrong. He could not catch his breath. Just like you and Jingqing, he blacked out and passed out. His genitals had been melted by origin energy. That kind of pain was so painful that even the slightest movement in other parts of his body was like being cut by a knife. You can't play dead if you want to. Ding Ming's eyes exerted a little force, and Yulong was woken up again. When he woke up, he jumped on the ground like a prawn. Ding Ming said, "All right, I'm done with my questions. You can call your people now." Yulong could not believe what he was hearing. Who should I call?" Ding Ming said calmly. "Call your subordinates to pick you up and take you away from Planet Beidou. Go to Planet Perry to hand over the goods." Yulong seemed to be dumbfounded. He could not figure out what Ding Ming was thinking even if he was beaten to death. Ding Ming looked at him again. "You have another idea?" No. Yulong ignored the pain in his lower body. Trembling, he turned on his wristband and projected a screen. He did not dare to call for help, so he could only pretend to be calm. "Brother Gu, where are you?" "I'm done eating. I'm going back. Come and pick me up." The voice on the other end of the screen was very surprised. "Young Master Yu, what's wrong with you? Why do you look so pale?" Yulong hurriedly said, "Don't ask so many questions. Come up quickly." After saying that, he turned off the communication and looked at Ding Ming carefully. Ding Ming suddenly showed a strange smile. "You're not being honest." Yulong raised his hand and said, "Brother, I swear I did what you told me to do." Ding Ming nodded expressionlessly. Yulong's wristband automatically left his wrist and flew into Ding Ming's hand. Ding Ming glanced at the list of contacts and then scanned the relevant information. He sighed. "You did call for help, but you secretly pressed the emergency signal on this panel. Do you think I didn't know?" Yulong was truly frightened now. His snot and tears flowed out at the same time. Big brother, I'm really wrong. I'm sorry. Please spare my life. I don't want to die. I'll give you all the money you want. Please spare my life." His voice was quickly cut off because his whole body was surrounded by a pale yellow source energy flame and instantly turned into ashes. Not even a trace of him was left. Ding Ming looked up and scanned the surroundings again. He released his telekinesis and carried the unconscious Yuan Zhengqing directly into the inner room. There were more than 20 beauties in Cheongsam there who had been knocked unconscious by his telekinesis. He cleaned the courtyard again and made sure it was as good as new. Then, Ding Ming slowly put on Yulong's wristband. His whole body slowly transformed into Yulong. 10 minutes later, a man in a suit came up like a whirlwind. "Young Master Yu, are you okay? What made you send the signal?" This person was called Gu Cheng. Ding Ming had seen him before in the private room of the combat arena. At this moment, Ding Ming used his telekinesis to sense him. Gu Cheng was a primary level combat monarch of the thermal element. He was also one of Yulong's entourage. Ding Ming waved his hand. "It's nothing. I accidentally bumped into him. Let's go back." Gu Cheng said. "Go back where? The Golden City Club? Or back to the spaceship?" Ding Ming said, "Back to the spaceship." Gu Cheng suddenly felt a little strange. Young Master Yu was always eating, drinking, gambling, and playing with women in Namling City. Qianyu was in charge of all the business matters. Why would he go back to the spaceship now? Could it be that he wanted to study the business? He did not know that Ding Ming was not confident that he could disguise Yulong. He did not want to kill Yulong at first, but this Yulong was not honest. He had no choice but to silence him. Now, no matter what, they had to march towards Planet Perry. Then should I ask Secretary Qian to drive the spaceship here? Gu Cheng asked hesitantly. Ding Ming nodded. That would be for the best. Chapter 669. The spaceship above the flying villa was actually a Star Moon exploration spaceship. It seemed that Lan Bing was not lying. The Starbao Group's influence on planet Beidou was really big. Large flying units were banned inside and outside the city, but the Starbao Group's spaceship could enter and leave freely. This was really not an ordinary level of authority. Since Yulong wanted to board the spaceship personally, a woman personally welcomed him at the cabin door after the connecting cabin opened. This was the Starbao Group's person in charge of the operation of the spaceship between planet Beidou and planet Perry, Qianyu. Ding Ming already knew from Yulong's wrist device that this person was Yulong's assistant on the surface, but was actually an important member of Ling Xingwen's entourage. According to the information, Qianyu was a civilian staff. However, this Qianyu was wearing a dazzling interstellar outfit that looked a bit like the armor of the Steel Legion. She was wrapped tightly from head to toe, but it just made one feel that she had a good figure. Furthermore, this woman had wavy blonde hair and looked very gentle. Qianyu also felt that it was unbelievable that Yulong wanted to board the spaceship personally. This young master had been on planet Beidou for almost 2 years, and all he did was eat, drink, and play. He did not do anything serious and had never participated in an escort mission. Could it be that he wanted to go to planet Perry? Young Master Yu, the spaceship will depart in 8 hours. Do you have any instructions for boarding the spaceship now? Qianyu's tone was a little cold. Yulong had been drooling over Qianyu's beauty for a long time. Every time he boarded the spaceship, he would either pretend to be deep in thought or smile mischievously. In any case, he would do all kinds of hints, flirting, and complacent little movements. However, he did not dare to openly harass Qianyu. His cousin Ling Xingwen valued this assistant very much. Ding Ming waved his hand and said, "Set sail immediately. I will also participate in the escort mission this time." Qianyu immediately looked at Gu Cheng in surprise. Gu Cheng helplessly spread his hands, indicating that he did not know what was wrong with this playboy either. "All right, young Master Yu, we will follow your instructions." Qianyu waved her hand and said. The spaceship quickly lifted off and sped into the depths of space. Ding Ming pretended to follow Qianyu to the command center. He had already figured out the structure of the Star Moon spaceship during the mission on Planet V9, so he did not give himself away. There were not many people in the command center because the Star Moon spaceship did not require too many people to operate. Therefore, when Ding Ming stood in front of the control panel, Qianyu took the initiative to explain, "Young Master Yu, since you've never participated in an escort mission before, I think it's necessary for me to explain the process to you. First, please take a look at the map." Ding Ming quickly noticed that Perry 2 was not far from planet Beidou. It would only take 5 hours of short-distance space transmission to reach it. However, Perry 2's position was very strange. It was vaguely pointing in the direction of the devouring sector instead of the fertile chalk system. Judging from the way the Starlight Group did things, they were definitely worried about being discovered. As expected, Qianyu explained, this route has already been sealed off by the Hubol's family. It is the exclusive route of the Starbao Group. This time, we will be escorting 10 small transport ships. The destination is to transit from planet Perry to planet Beidou. The cargo is C-grade dark matter second-class residue, and the unit is 20 million, Ding Ming asked without batting an eyelid. Is this from the Warp Mirror base? Qianyu rolled her eyes. This young master was good at playing with women, but he knew nothing about business. He even asked such an idiotic question. However, she had no choice but to patiently explain, "Yes, this is from the fertile chalk system. Master Yu, I suggest that you learn more about our group's warp mirror base. Ding Ming nodded and said, I will. Qian Yu looked at him in surprise. In the past, Yulong would have brought up some harassing topics at this time. Why was he so polite this time? This was very unusual. Ding Ming asked again. Then how should we do the escorting? Qian Yu coughed dryly. Young Master Yu, if you want to take a look around, then Brother Gu will take you around. If you sincerely want to take on the responsibility that Second Miss has given you, then you can just follow behind me. You'll understand after a few more walks. Ding Ming nodded again and said, All right, then I will have to trouble you to lead the way. I'm a little tired, so I will go back to my room to rest. Qian Yu was shocked beyond words. This Yulong seemed to have changed into a different person. What did he do in Nanling City? In the end, Ding Ming turned his head and said to Gu Cheng, Brother Gu, can you arrange 2 people for me to cool down? I didn't get to play at the Jeweling Mountain Villa just now. He was imitating Yulong's attitude and tone when he was at the villa. Although it was an imitation, it was actually because he didn't know where Yulong's room was. Gu Cheng immediately showed a hesitant expression. Qian Yu's face darkened and said, The second lady has a rule that no one is allowed to mess around on the command ship. Master Yu, please bear with it. Ding Ming had an idea and said, Then give me some drinks to sober me up. I drank a little too much just now, so I need to take a nap. Brother Gu, help me get some more. Gu Cheng then nodded and bowed. All right, Master Yu, I will send you there. The resting area was indeed in the lower level of the ship. Once they reached the main passage, Gu Cheng said softly, Master Yu, Miss Qian just got a boyfriend recently. Oh, Ding Ming immediately perked up. How did you know? Gu Cheng said, A friend in the company told me. He was still playing in Nanling City yesterday. Have you forgotten about that Xiao Jie? He is the second lady's finance commissioner. Ding Ming pretended to be hesitant and said, Then what do you mean? Gu Cheng advised earnestly, Master Yu, with your status, is there any woman you can't play with? You don't have to hang yourself on a tree. After this period of time passes, when you return to the Federation, you can have whatever you want. Why worry about not having a woman? Could it be that this Yulong was pursuing Qian Yu? At this moment, Ding Ming's brain was spinning rapidly. No, with Yulong's personality, it was impossible. He must be greedy for Qian Yu's beauty. Therefore, he decided to act more realistic. Ding Ming waved his hand casually. All right, Brother Gu, I know you're taking care of me. Women, I know how to deal with them. Who knew that Gu Cheng would misunderstand? Then do you want to teach your boyfriend a lesson? As he spoke, he made a cutting gesture with his hand. Ding Ming sighed in admiration. It was true that a subordinate would have the same moral character as his master. Seeing that they were about to reach the resting area, Ding Ming waved his hand and said, Forget it. I am a little tired today. I need to sleep. He didn't really want to rest. He was just anxious to digest the information on Yulong's wrist device. If he continued chatting like this, he would definitely expose himself. This was because, in his perception, Qian Yu was also a battle monarch. There were 2 battle monarchs on this ship. They were not as strong as he was, but who could guarantee that they would not discover his problem? Therefore, what Ding Ming needed to do was to quickly digest Yulong's communication records. Although his telekinetic vision could instantly scan the information, he still had to slowly digest it and filter out useful clues. In these 5 hours, he found clues from the records of many contacts. The person in charge of Perry Planet was Zhong Huazheng. At the same time, he was also a senior manager of all the Chu Jing bases in Xinghong outer space. What was interesting was that Ding Ming found that the Ling family did not seem to be united internally. Currently, only Ding Ming and the others knew that this so-called C-grade dark matter was true elemental crystals. However, in the eyes of Xinghong Corporation, this was a super energy source. Therefore, Ling Xingqi led this development project. Just as Ding Ming had guessed, this project had to start with Chu Jing technology first. Therefore, Zhong Huazheng of Perry Planet was equivalent to Ling Xingqi's spokesperson. As for the transportation, Ling Xingwen was involved. Because Ling Xingwen and the Hubels family had a good relationship, the person in charge of the headquarters was Ling Zhixing himself. The transit string was arranged to deal with all kinds of emergency situations at the headquarters. Just looking at this information, it seemed ordinary. However, Ding Ming had a vague feeling that the eldest daughter of the Ling family was really running around and actively contributing to the corporation. The second daughter of the Ling family was not on good terms with the transit string. She was always on guard against the transit string. However, the transit string did not do anything about it. It felt like the internal strife in Xinghong Corporation was quite fierce. After studying it for a while, Gu Cheng's call came in. "Young master, you prepare to land. Come out." After returning to the command center, Ding Ming could finally see clearly. Planet Perry Planet's Chu Jing base was exactly the same as Planet V9's, but it was more than 10 times larger. Planet Perry Planet was not a poison hazard planet. Instead, it was a very primitive desert. This godforsaken place was also not illuminated by the sun. The base was hidden deep in the dark sand dunes. The pentagon of the base was 100 stories tall. Ding Ming had not even stepped out of the connecting module, but he could already sense all kinds of auras in the air inside and outside the base. This feeling was similar to the first time he had entered Leaston Academy. His weak senses had been able to detect many kinds of origin energy fluctuations. However, this was obviously not an academy. There were more than 100 auras here. Even though none of them surpassed the aura of a combat master, these auras were either vigorous, agile, strict, cold, or ferocious. The depth of the foundation, the refinement of the auras, Ding Ming dared to say that there were at least 50 battle monarchs and 30 battle saints in this place. Some of them were probably mid-level battle saints or above. What a terrifying force this was. Even though Ding Ming's current strength was also tyrannical, he did not dare to say that he could take on so many people by himself. This trip had really opened his eyes. Perhaps this was the true elites of the Xinghong Corporation. The people he had seen before were all random and unskilled. This was the place where the true experts gathered. He quickly thought it through. Because this was not Poison Hazard Planet, there was no cover to speak of. Ling Xingqi had sent such a powerful force to guard this place. Even if someone discovered them, what could they do? For a moment, Ding Ming felt very fortunate. Fortunately, he had not been arrogant and impulsive. Instead, he had pretended to be Yulong. If he had really acted recklessly, the consequences would have been dire. To be honest, Ding Ming did not believe that anyone would be able to force their way into this secret base. When he raised his head again, he saw Zhong Huazheng waiting on the tarmac. Zhong Huazheng's attitude was especially polite. "Thank you for your hard work, Secretary Qian." Then, his voice changed again. Little you came personally this time as well?" Chapter 670. Ding Ming was speechless when he saw Zhong Huazheng's surprised tone. It seemed like Yulong was used to idling around. Before he knew how to answer, Qin Yu answered for him, "Uncle Zhong, young master Yu wants to visit our base." "Oh, I see." Zhong Huazheng had a look of realization. "Okay, Qin Yu, you can take little Yu around." Qin Yu understood. "Uncle Zhong, I'll go downstairs with young master Yu to rest." Ding Ming finally realized that she was not welcomed by everyone. She was told to walk around, but in fact, she was locked in the lounge to prevent the wandering dragon from coming out and messing around, which would affect the normal work order here. After entering the hall on the first floor, Ding Ming saw the curved light teleportation orb in the center again. However, this one was much bigger than the one on Planet V9, and its color and shape were different. It was light gray in the shape of a rhombus, like a raised sharp knife. Could it be that the transport ships on Planet V9 were sent back from here, but the warp mirror here could send them to even further star systems? Was it the outer star vortex of the fertile chalk star system? Ding Ming immediately calculated the distance. Starting from the Federation, Blue Pole Star City, Planet V9, Beidou, Planet Perry, fertile chalk star system, the edge of the star system, the outer star vortex. If it was a normal journey, there would be as many as 9 checkpoints, especially the war zone at the edge of the fertile chalk star system. The situation there was complicated. No matter how powerful the Starbow Corporation was, Could they be more powerful than the Norse Empire's fleet? Dingming had an idea. The teleportation coordinates were most likely somewhere in the outer star vortex. Qianyu had already brought him down to B6. It looked like a hotel corridor, and it was obviously a very luxurious resting area. After opening a suite, Qianyu said, "Young master, you can rest here." Dingming asked calmly, "What about you?" Qianyu said, "Young master, do you want me to stay with you?" Dingming was overjoyed. "That's great." Qianyu unexpectedly said, "Young master, if you want me to accompany you, you should at least pour me a glass of wine, right?" "No problem, no problem." Dingming happily turned around and ran to the wine cabinet by the wall. Just as Dingming reached out to open the small door of the cabinet, Qianyu suddenly took a step forward from behind and slammed her palm into the back of his neck. Dingming swayed and then fell to the ground. Qianyu stared at him coldly. "Young master, you should rest well. Don't think about such evil things." At this moment, Qianyu no longer looked like a calm civil servant. She quickly took off the alloy armor, revealing a set of tight-fitting black clothes. She also took out an anti-gravity satchel from her waist. Then, she tied up her wavy hair and casually stuffed the alloy armor into the wardrobe. Her movements were very experienced and skillful. After all this was done, the door of the training room opened and a young man in the same outfit walked in. "You're finally here. I've been waiting for a long time." Qianyu said, "There was an accident on the way." The young man glanced at the unconscious Dingming on the ground and couldn't help but be surprised. "Isn't this guy Yulong? What's he doing here?" Qianyu said, "I don't know what's wrong with his head. Why didn't he just stay in Nanling City and insist on coming to Planet Perry?" The young man frowned and said, "What do we do now? Should we kill him?" Qianyu waved her hand and said, "No. If we lose a person for no reason, that Zhong guy will definitely investigate and bring him along. He will think that this young master you wanted to experience the teleportation and insisted that I bring him along. Besides, if we bring him along, we can use him as a shield if we are discovered." Not only was her thinking meticulous, but she was also decisive in her decision-making. Dingming was quickly put into an alloy box. This box was obviously used to store people. There was even an air circulation and purification system inside. It seemed that Qianyu and the young man were prepared. After everything was ready, the young man dragged the box and entered the training room with Qianyu. Together, they came to a blind spot in the northwest corner of the hall. The ceiling here had been tampered with. After lifting the steel plate, they entered a narrow passage. It was obvious that this was not a ventilation duct, nor was it a robot maintenance duct. It was a strange passage that had been dug manually. It felt like it was made with a tool like a crystal flame probe. It was crooked and bumpy, and it was only wide enough for one person to go through at a time. After going around for a long time, the two of them finally stopped beside a cooling pile of mechanical maintenance ducts. Those who didn't know would think that it was a large-wheeled machine. In fact, the young man used the alloy box to push open the pile, and then the two of them jumped down. The environment below was familiar to anyone. It was the main passage of the spaceship. Qianyu patted the dust off her body and let out a long sigh. "We're finally here. It wasn't easy. You worked hard this time, Shaola." Shaola said respectfully, "It's my honor to serve Mississippi. It's not hard at all." The two of them talked as they walked towards the command center. Qianyu sighed. "You don't have to be so humble. It was difficult enough to sneak in here. If you weren't careful, you would have been exposed. Not to mention, you had to dig a secret passage." Shaola smiled and said, "Miss, I won't lie to you. This was also because of my job as a mechanic. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to dig it out in half a year. But it's still not as dangerous as what you did." Qianyu sneered. Ling Xingqi thought that her place was hidden. She didn't think that I would still be able to get in. The two of them entered the command center. This place must have been arranged in advance. There was not a single worker in sight. Through the window, they could see that the spaceship was parked on a lift and was being slowly pushed to the ground. The warp teleportation orb on the first floor of the base was fully charged. At this moment, a thick beam of blue light shot into the sky. The dazzling star path was finally opened. The transport ship lifted off and was instantly teleported away. Inside the transport ship, Qianyu and Luli did not feel the invasion of the space storm in the space-time rift at all, because it only took them about 5 seconds to see the light in front of them. This was the true meaning of daytime. The spaceship was parked on a flat grassland. Above them was the gray sky. It looked like it was drizzling. The grass on the ground was as tall as a person. Many swamps were hidden under the grass. This was a typical swamp environment in the fertile chalk system. Do you know how they operate? Qianyu asked. Shaola said, I asked around. They will send someone to pick us up. Qianyu said, then we'll go down first. Shaolu said, what about Yulong? Should we let him out? Qianyu said, let him out. Put him in the holding pod. Shaolu immediately turned around and squatted down. His finger tapped on the crystal password on the box. The moment the box opened, he was so shocked that he took a few steps back. This was because Ding Meng's eyes were staring straight at him. He felt like he was being stared at by a hungry wolf. His hair stood on end. Shaolu reacted quickly. You're awake? Ding Meng sat up and stretched comfortably. Thank you. Qian Yu's eyes narrowed. He asked calmly, Young master you, did you rest well? Ding Meng nodded. Thank you. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to teleport here. I didn't expect you to use such a clever method. Qian Yu said in a low voice, Young master you, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Ding Meng smiled. What I mean is simple. You guys worked together and successfully infiltrated the Starbow Group's base. You sneaked onto the transport ship and teleported to the fertile chalk system. Impressive, Qian Yu said coldly. What do you mean by working together? I don't understand. Ding Meng smiled. Stop pretending. You're not the real Qian Yu. Qian Yu's eyes turned cold. You're not the real Yulong either. Shaolu was shocked to hear this. He looked at Ding Meng in shock. This guy was an imposter. Ding Meng smiled. How did you know? Qian Yu snorted. I've been investigating this for a long time. That Yulong is a lecher. He's been trying to get his hands on Qian Yu for a long time. He wouldn't act like you. You didn't pretend well, but that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. Ding Meng looked at her with interest. But you found out in the end. Qian Yu said proudly, pretending is a skill. Too bad you failed. Ding Meng was surprised. Oh, tell me about it. Qian Yu said, from the moment you boarded the ship, I knew you weren't Yulong. Yulong was forbidden from boarding the ship. This was an order given by Ling Xingwen. He used to harass Qian Yu when he boarded the ship. Qian Yu couldn't stand it. So Ling Xingwen forbade her from boarding the ship. You were allowed to board the ship because I wanted to see who was pretending to be Yulong, so I let you in. Ding Meng was impressed. You're really knowledgeable. You've done your homework. I'm impressed. I'm not impressed. Qian Yu shook her head. I'm curious. How did you see through me? Ding Meng smiled again. It's very simple. Your youth-retaining cultivation method is based on the origin of your facial structure. I can more or less see some of it. With one look, I can tell that this isn't your facial outline. Qian Yu was silent for a long time before she said, I'm impressed. Ding Meng shook his head. I wouldn't dare. Qian Yu revealed a strange expression. In the entire Holy Grail Federation, there are less than 10 people who can see the origin of my facial structure. But I've never heard of anyone like you. Of course, I'm not trying to find out who you are, because I know you're not a good person. Ding Meng smiled. People who say I'm not a good person are usually very interesting. When he first met Xinjie also said the same thing about him. Qian Yu stared at him. Although I knew you weren't Yulong, I thought you were just an ordinary person. Only now do I know that I was wrong. You pretended to be knocked out. In fact, my strength was barely enough to scratch your itch. Ding Meng nodded. Not bad. You know your limits. The strange expression on Qian Yu's face became even more obvious. But now, even I can't see through you. I'm afraid you're even stronger than those on the ranking list. Chapter 671. Ding Meng smiled and shook his head. Don't you think you've overestimated me? No, I haven't. Qian Yu vetoed. Someone as powerful as you would be able to do whatever you want no matter where you go. I didn't expect you to go through so much trouble to pretend to be a playboy like Yulong, and you even managed to sneak into the Star Rainbow Corporation's secret launch base. That's why I said you're not a good person. Ding Meng asked, what about you? Are you a good person? You've planted spies inside the launch site. That alone is difficult enough. The worst part is that you've impersonated Qianyu and spent a lot of effort to investigate the people and things related to your operation. Do you think that what you're after is small? Qianyu said, the real Yulong must have been killed by you before he boarded the Starman spaceship, right? Ding Meng was surprised. Oh, Qianyu said disdainfully, if he wasn't dead, we wouldn't have been able to reach Perry's star. Ding Meng sighed. The real Qianyu is probably dead as well. Qianyu said, why do you say that? Ding Meng said, with how intricate and complicated your plan is, you can't afford to make any mistakes. That's why only dead people won't leak secrets. Qianyu suddenly sighed. To be honest, I'm starting to admire you. Ding Meng said in a low voice, me too. Qianyu sighed. But it's a pity. Ding Meng nodded. It is indeed a pity. Qianyu looked around and said, if you want to go back, this spaceship can't be damaged. Xiaolu, stay on the ship and don't come down. Xiaolu looked at her nervously. I understand, miss. Qianyu gestured to Ding Meng. How about we go out for a chat? Ding Meng said, that's what I was thinking. The connecting cabin was quickly opened and the escalator was lowered. As soon as they stepped out of the spaceship, they were greeted by the cold wind and rain. Qianyu walked down the escalator and said, are you interested in making a bet? Ding Meng asked, what kind of bet? Qianyu said, the Star Rainbow Group's transmission is set at a fixed time. Once we land here, someone will come to pick us up 30 minutes later, so we don't have much time left, at most 10 minutes. Ding Meng nodded and said, I understand your concerns, but don't worry about one thing. I can control my aura in a certain direction. People far away won't be able to sense it. Qianyu gave him a thumbs up. Expert. Ding Meng stretched out his hand and said, please. Qianyu said, then I won't hold back. Ding Meng stood still and looked at her calmly. Qianyu was not in a hurry to make a move. She was also observing Ding Meng. Both of them were standing in a rather casual manner. At first glance, there were no openings on their bodies, but upon closer inspection, there were no openings at all. The two of them immediately raised their guard. Experts who had reached this level of cultivation were indeed well-versed in these things. Suddenly, Ding Meng felt his vision blur. If one had been on a roller coaster before, when the roller coaster suddenly dropped, the weightlessness would be like stepping on air on a skyscraper. It would cause one's vision to waver and one's body to become light. However, Ding Meng's telekinesis vision told him that this was Qianyu's biochemical brainwave interference. At the same time, Qianyu was floating 3 feet above the ground. If it weren't for Ding Meng's strength, anyone else would have thought that they were seeing things. Qianyu hadn't arrived yet, but she had already raised her palm and pushed it forward. The 100-ton transport ship behind Ding Meng was pushed more than 10 meters away by the force of her palm. The power of her palm was simply astonishing. Qianyu's palm strike had no other intentions. Firstly, she wanted to test the opponent's strength. Secondly, she wanted to push the transport ship away and prevent Xiao Lu from getting involved in the upcoming dangerous battle. Ding Meng quickly activated the first 8 points of his telekinesis and pushed back with his palm. Pum! Their palms didn't touch, but the air instantly exploded. The explosion was like a sharp needle piercing through a water balloon. Countless amounts of energy poured down, and a deep crater immediately appeared on the ground. Both of them were pushed back by the force of the other's palm strike. They were pushed back more than 20 meters before they could regain their footing. Ding Meng was secretly shocked. Ever since the battle at Shengtian Peak, he had never met such a terrifying opponent. This Qianyu, to some extent, was no weaker than Shengtian Peak. She was a super strong opponent that he had never met before. While he was shocked, Qianyu was even more horrified. The force of her opponent's palm strike was a standard thermodynamic ability user's attack, but it contained a variety of inconceivable forces. She didn't know how to describe it. This was a feeling she had only experienced when she was a warrior. When her mentor pushed her palm, she mustered up her courage and met it head-on. Not only was she pushed back, but her palm also burned with pain. Where had this battle saint-level monster come from? Seeing that her attack hadn't landed, Qianyu quickly adjusted her strategy. Her entire body floated into the air and she suddenly raised her hands. Two bluish-purple cross-shaped blades spun between her palms, releasing a dazzling light. Not only did this light illuminate the horizon, but it also froze the surrounding raindrops, forming an icy energy field that enveloped the ground. Ever since he had started cultivating origin energy, Ding Ming had never admired anyone. This time, however, he was truly impressed. This Qianyu was a super origin energy user who was proficient in biochemistry, gravity, and ice. It wasn't difficult to cultivate multiple elements, but Qianyu had cultivated every single one of them to the peak. Facing such a frightening opponent, Ding Ming didn't dare to be careless. His 8 origin points circulated to their limits as he pushed his palms into the air. 2 crescent-shaped blades of origin energy immediately rose into the air. Qianyu, who was in midair, bent down and threw the 2 cross-shaped blades downwards. When the blades collided with the blades, not only were they not repelled, but they actually froze into an icy mist. The air was covered in a white mist, as if the sky was covered in bubbles. The blades only paused for a moment, then began to spin in circles, flying towards Ding Ming in an extremely strange manner. Ding Ming quickly retreated. He was very experienced. His opponent's cross-shaped blades weren't origin energy weapons, but rather some kind of profound martial technique. It was a materialized form of origin energy. If he took it head-on, he would either die or be crippled. It seemed that Qianyu was a decisive character. Her first attack was vicious. However, the direction in which Ding Ming retreated was very smart. He was retreating toward the transport ship's escalator. If Qianyu didn't stop, the transport ship would be blown to pieces. 2 muffled booms rang out. The cross-shaped blades that were about to reach the escalator automatically exploded, turning into countless pieces of ice and snow. They stirred up a raging gale. This was actually the winter ice dust storm. The storm completely enveloped an area with a radius of 300 meters. An attack of this level would have turned a battlelord into an ice sculpture in the middle of the storm. However, Ding Ming's expression was grim. He was highly focused. He suddenly bent forward, and Qianyu's palm actually reached out to grab him from behind. This grab naturally missed, so Qianyu switched to a knee strike. However, Ding Ming suddenly rolled forward, and her knee strike missed as well. Qianyu wasn't discouraged. Within this powerful ice force field, she firmly believed that her opponent's speed would be greatly reduced. As such, she sent out several palm strikes in the direction Ding Ming had rolled to. The wind generated by her palm strikes didn't cause the ground to crack, nor did they form a mirror image. Instead, they froze the grass on the ground with a series of cracking sounds. Upon closer inspection, it turned out that they were all black walls of ice. Ding Ming was fully aware of how powerful this move of hers was. Even though he kept rolling left and right, the stabbing pain all over his body grew stronger and stronger. His opponent's ice origin energy had greatly reduced his speed. Qianyu suddenly leaped out of the icy dust. Her left hand curled into a claw, and she struck out at Ding Ming, who was still on the ground. Ding Ming's body trembled slightly. Her left hand curled into a claw, and her body moved in the air like she was fishing the moon out of the water. This claw was a true killing move. Ding Ming could already sense the terrifying aura emanating from his opponent's claw. It had been a long time since he'd had such a feeling. An icy chill seeped into his bones, causing all the hair on his body to stand on end. In the next moment, the god of death was about to arrive. Ding Ming's feet slammed into the ground, and his entire body shot off into the distance like a cannonball. However, Qianyu's arm suddenly lengthened, reaching at least 10 meters in length. This was one of the strengths of the biochemical element. She could stretch and contort her body at will, and she could reach places that she couldn't reach before. With a light swoosh, the ice claw slashed across Ding Ming's chest. It was obvious just how strange this move was. With another swoosh, Ding Ming flew out of the force field and landed on one knee. His suit and shirt were completely shredded, and his muscular skin was covered in a layer of white frost. His chest was dripping with blood, and 3 bone-deep wounds could be seen. At this moment, all of the icy mist, sandstorm, and force fields had turned into water vapor. Qianyu slowly walked out of the water vapor. She gently raised her right hand and opened her palm. The water vapor gathered in her palm at a speed visible to the naked eye. Qianyu stared at Ding Meng in the distance. Her face was also covered in a layer of frost, and it was just as frighteningly cold. If Ding Meng had turned into a corpse, she would have thought that it was normal. However, Ding Meng wasn't dead, and the fear in her heart was something she had never felt before. She even noticed that Ding Meng's wounds were slowly healing. This was the healing effect of the god's light energy and the green energy from the inverse source crystal. The frost on his body was also quickly evaporating. Qianyu sighed and said, "I didn't want to ask, but I can't help it now. May I know which family's first seat you are?" Ding Meng slowly stood up and asked in a deep voice, "I also want to know who you are. There aren't many high-level battle saints in the Federation." Qianyu sneered, "Only if you tell me first." Ding Meng said, "I don't have the habit of telling people first." Qianyu stared at him. "It seems that you still don't have enough self-awareness." Ding Meng's lips curled into a cold smile. "Self-awareness isn't something that can be achieved through words alone. Is that so? Then we'll have to see whether or not your ultimate skill can make people self-aware." As she said this, Qianyu secretly adjusted all the origin energy in her body to its limit. She was already prepared to defend against her opponent's counterattack. She really wanted to see for herself just how extraordinary this person who could survive her attack was. Chapter 672. Ding Meng got up and stood still. He also carefully sized up this expert whom he had never seen before. The exchange just now revealed too much information about him. Originally, he had thought that Qianyu was a triple elemental origin ability user. Who would have thought that she would also cultivate the light elemental origin ability? External 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 origin ability? Second origin ability? Cold winter ice storm? Afterimage ability? All of her origin ability techniques had been cultivated to the extreme. Most importantly, her combat experience was not lacking either. Just a moment ago, he had thought that this person was on par with Towering Sky Peak. Now, he was certain that Towering Sky Peak was definitely not a match for Qianyu. He had a strong intuition that Qianyu was so fearless because she had a trump card up her sleeve. It seemed that he had underestimated this person. Ding Meng secretly activated his 9th origin. "Since you want to see my trump card, I'll satisfy you." Even though Qianyu had made ample preparations, she had never imagined that Ding Meng's counterattack would be so astonishing. In just an instant, she had sensed that Ding Meng's aura had increased explosively. Then, she could clearly see that Ding Meng's body had been ignited by a transparent flame. Not good. Qianyu also realized that a great danger had descended. Ding Meng hadn't even moved yet, but the pressure from his aura was like a pair of invisible hands that had grabbed her by the throat, making it difficult for her to even breathe. Qianyu had no intention of attacking. Instead, she subconsciously put up a shield. This shield was in the form of an open umbrella. The umbrella was pink in color, and its surface was covered with complicated patterns. At the same time, it spun rapidly in the direction of Ding Meng. This time, Ding Meng didn't hold back. His entire right arm was glowing. Not only was it infused with the pure origin ability he had refined many times, but it was also infused with the divine light energy transferred from the divine light bracer. Its momentum was like a blade of light as it slashed out. His Ding-style handblade had never been used with such ferocious might before. It could be said that it was like a thunderbolt, unstoppable. Ding, boom, bang. These were two completely different sounds. When a hand blade hit the shield immediately shattered and turned into countless colorful stars. Shocked, Qianyu crossed her arms to block Ding Meng's chop, but her arms were immediately knocked away. The chop accurately hit her collarbone, and Qianyu was sent flying. Following the trajectory of her flight, The ground exploded one after another. Deep pits with a diameter of 20 meters appeared one after another, like a series of steel seals embedded into the ground. Fortunately, there was no one around. If someone saw this, they would not believe that this was caused by a human, but by the cannons of a starship. Qianyu flew for over 100 meters before crashing into the escalator of the transport ship. The escalator, made of 256 yuan alloy, was smashed into pieces. Qianyu's back finally slammed into the steel wall of the transport ship. She slid down and sat on the mud. Strands of pink blood continuously flowed out of her mouth. This was obviously a unique cultivation technique or secret scripture that she cultivated, which had neutralized Ding Meng's origin energy fluctuations. Otherwise, this chop would have been enough to melt the transport ship behind her into a puff of molten steel. Qianyu's heart sank because she was very clear about the state of her body. Many of the mirror regions in her body had been shattered, her shoulder blades had been broken, and her origin energy had decreased by a large amount. If it weren't for her secret scripture shield, she would have been a piece of fresh meat on the ground right now. However, Ding Meng didn't come over. Instead, he stared at her from afar. "Do you understand now?" Qianyu laughed bitterly. "Your understanding is even higher. You didn't take advantage of this opportunity to take my life." Ding Meng sighed. "Do you really think it's that easy to kill a battle saint?" Qianyu's bitter laugh turned into a cold sneer. "If you want to see my true face or find out where I came from, I advise you not to. Even if I die at your hands, you still won't know." Ding Meng slowly walked over. "You're overthinking things. Who are you? I'm not interested. What do you really look like? I'm still not interested." Qianyu didn't understand. She frowned and said, "Then what do you want?" Ding Meng said meaningfully, "You spent so much effort to come to the fertile chalk system. Perhaps your goal is the same as mine." Qianyu laughed disdainfully. "You men have a common problem, don't you? You think too highly of yourself. I guarantee that you won't be able to guess my goal in coming here." Ding Meng stared at her. "I just want to remind you of one thing. I'm sure you know that if two battle saints really go all out and fight to the death, either the ground will shake and the mountains will shake, or the result will be instant death." Qianyu understood this. If they continued to fight, they would no doubt alert the people from the Starbao Corporation. Moreover, if they really fought to the death, honestly, she didn't think she had much of a chance of winning. This fake Yulong's strength was unfathomable. In any case, no matter what the two sides chose, continuing to fight would only bring harm. No matter what you want to do, don't even think about doing it. Everyone had worked so hard to get here, and their efforts would be wasted. Qianyu laughed coldly. "You want me to work with you?" Ding Meng said, "Not really, because you're too dangerous." Similarly, I'm also dangerous to you. However, I feel that before things are cleared up, we'll end up killing each other like mortal enemies. In the end, it'll only benefit the Starbao Corporation. These words hit the nail on the head. Qianyu struggled to stand up. After stretching her shoulders, she said, "I can tell you that this is the poison dragon planet in the outer region of the fertile chalk system. Ling Xingqi came here many years ago. She discovered a special kind of radiation here that can condense a large amount of energy. Since then, she has been running around trying to find it." Ding Meng said in a low voice, "That's not radiation. It's a special kind of fluctuation." Qianyu said, "Yes, the source of this fluctuation is a new kind of ore. It can be broken down into a new kind of energy. She has been searching for it." Ding Meng said, "It looks like this is still not the core. I'm afraid it's still the outer region. She has only found the residue, but not the source." Qianyu revealed a surprised expression. "I didn't expect you to know more than I do. This is the highest level secret of the Starbao Corporation. How did you find out?" Ding Meng chuckled inwardly. "The information I've come into contact with is just the tip of the iceberg. What you know is just the tip of the iceberg. It's simple. At your level, it's not hard to find out about these things." Ding Meng replied. This was just a perfunctory reply, but Qianyu agreed with it. "Yes, it is indeed very difficult to hide these things from the eyes of those old fogies. Ling Xingqi suddenly disappeared many years ago. Everyone was very curious to begin with. What could a genius like her have gone missing all of a sudden? At this moment, Ding Ming almost immediately understood Ling Xingqi's overall plan. If the Starbao Corporation wanted to obtain the true elemental crystals, they would not be able to do so through the proper channels. Putting aside the obstacle from the Federation and the military, just the fertile chalk system's complicated situation made it impossible to send a large fleet in and out. That would be too easy to arouse suspicion. She had to think of a way to get the best of both worlds. She could not startle the heroes from all over the world while also avoiding the war zones of the Empire and the Frogman Nation. Planet Beidou was definitely the best place to do so. She could enter freely and head to the fertile chalk system. If she retreated, she would be able to reach the bustling southern Tomb City. She could make use of the Hubowls family's influence to avoid detection. Now that the route had been confirmed, the fleet was another big problem. The Starbao Corporation could not send out a large fleet led by multiple motherships. Transporting the residue of the true elemental crystals was not a one-time deal. The fleet would be in and out of the spaceport for a long period of time. They could not afford to be targeted, not to mention the high cost of transportation. Therefore, Ling Xingqi took a risk. She put the Curved Mirror Project on the agenda, which led to the Transit Strings trip to the Blue Moon branch to invite Mr. Cuddleback then. After the Curved Light Teleportation Array was developed, it could not be completely hidden from detection. It could only be said that it reduced the risk of exposure to the minimum. However, to be absolutely safe, the teleportation array would have to be moved to the Poison Handicap planet. However, the Poison Handicap planet required the Poison Drive technology. Coincidentally, the descendants of Shui and Mingyan and the other doctors were rescued by Ding Ming at the time and brought back to the Federation. All the clues were put together to form a complete chess game. Ding Ming suddenly realized that he was also one of the chess pieces on this chessboard. He even thought of an even more shocking possibility, but he was not confident enough to prove it, so he did not plan to say it out loud. So you came to the Fertile Chalk system to take a look and see what she is up to? Qian Yu sneered. I told you before, you will never know the real purpose of my trip. All right. Ding Ming clapped her hands. No matter what your purpose is or what you're going to do, it's time to set off. Qian Yu also sensed that there were traces of technological energy fluctuations coming from far away in their direction. It must be the Starbao Group's reinforcements. 3 minutes later, 2 aircrafts that looked like swordfish airships appeared above the swamp. They flew close to the tip of the grass at a low altitude. The aircrafts did not have the Starbao Group's logo, but 2 very familiar humanoid battle armors came down from the aircrafts. The 2 battle armors each carried a huge spear. Ding Ming suddenly remembered that when he left Blue Pole Star City for the Immortal Weaver planet, the Transit String entrusted Jin Xiaoyan to give him 2 pieces of equipment, the Godslayer Ion Pulse Gun and the Blue Origin Battle Armor series. These were the exclusive products of the Starbao Group. However, 7 years ago, these 2 items were scarce goods. Could it be that they had become ordinary goods today? Or was the armed forces on Poison Handicap planet that strong? It should be noted that the 2 soldiers who came down were emitting the pure aura of war supremacy. The Blue Origin Battle Armor was 7 meters tall and had a very advanced head scanning system. The leading soldier had probably scanned Ding Ming and Qian Yu's body characteristics. He immediately put the pulse gun back on his back and bowed respectfully. So it is Secretary Qian and Mr. Yu. Welcome. Although he said, welcome, his tone was filled with shock. Qian Yu was already prepared for this and explained in a low voice, Young Master Yu often takes on escort missions over there. This time, he insisted on coming to take a look at our operations, so I accompanied him to take a look around. Chapter 673. Qian Yu's explanation could only mean one thing. Yulong was here to play, not to transport the debris. The reason was simple. She and Ding Ming were the only 2 people in the open space. However, The black craters created by Ding Ming's explosion were visible to the naked eye. The soldier could not help but ask, "Secretary Qian, is there a problem with the transport ship? Do you need us to send a construction vehicle over?" Qian Yu waved her hand and said, "No need. I was bored while waiting for you, so I practiced alone." The soldier no longer doubted her and made a gesture of invitation. "Secretary Qian, President Yu, please board the ship." Fortunately, these two were only advanced war venerables. If it were any other high-level origin ability user, they would have discovered the problem with the craters at a glance. This was definitely not a practice, but a result of a fierce battle. The aura of various types of origin ability had not completely dissipated yet. The airship seemed to be heading back the way it came, still flying low above the grass. This speed was not fast, but Ding Ming noticed that there were more and more swamps hidden under the grass, and they were faintly black. Obviously, they were poisonous. Without this airship, it would be quite troublesome for people to walk on the ground. As the airship went deeper, the rain and fog became thicker and thicker, and the color of the sky was faintly red. It felt as if they had entered a world of red clouds. Ding Ming could not help but sigh. If one wanted to come to this place from Blue Pole Star City, even if one was an expert in tracking and investigating, one would not be able to reach this place without luck. 3 hours later, they finally arrived at their destination. Ding Ming and Qian Yu had made various assumptions in advance. This place should be some kind of base, or, at the very least, there should be facilities like a factory. However, what appeared in front of them now was a building that looked like a star ring, floating in the red clouds. It could be seen that the exterior was made of a shiny alloy, and it was about the size of a medium-sized spaceship. It floated quietly in the air, and there was no change on the ground. It looked like a small star ring, but in fact, it was more like a super-large mechanical device. It used an anti-gravity system powered by superconducting stones, which allowed it to float for a long time. Ding Ming knew this because he had been to the Divinity's War Star Zone. Wasn't the star ring of the 6 major sects similar to this? However, the star ring was very small. It was divided into 2 levels. The airships would go directly to the lower level. It was indeed a port. Airships of all sizes were docked there. The upper floor was empty. It was just a circular hall without a central control panel. There was only a small control panel in the far corner, and a few ordinary people in armor were discussing something. "Welcome, welcome. Welcome, Secretary Qian and CEO Yu." An old man in a white protective suit greeted them with a smile. "I'm Luo Bin, the data technician of this B3 detector workstation." Detector? Ding Ming was a little curious. The building did not seem to have any radar or sensors. "How did you detect it?" Luo Bin smiled. "CEO Yu, this must be your first time here. It's normal that you don't know how it works. If we're lucky and capture the energy of the conveyor belt, CEO, you will soon understand." Ding Ming and Qian Yu were still confused. They did not understand what the old man was saying. What was this place? How did it work? What was the use of this so-called detector? Where was the residue? Both of them had no idea. However, both of them did not take the initiative to ask to avoid arousing suspicion. Qian Yu smiled. "Elder Luo, CEO Yu is just here for a stroll. You can continue with your work. We'll just walk around." Luo Bin pointed into the distance and said, "There's a rest area over there, but this is a workstation. It's a bit shabby. I hope you don't mind." Following the direction of his finger, there were a few sofas and coffee tables in the opposite corner of the hall. It seemed that this was a place for people to talk. This rest area was indeed shabby. Qian Yu did not reject Luo Bin's suggestion because she really did need a rest. Even if she was a biochemist and had self-healing abilities, the injuries that Ding Ming had inflicted on her were not small. Thus, she walked to the rest area and sat down on the sofa. She then took out a few exquisitely packaged reagent from her bag, twisted the knob, and drank all of them. Although it looked like a nutrient solution, Ding Ming knew that a reagent that could heal a battle sage was definitely not ordinary. It must be something that Qian Yu was saving for critical moments. Ding Ming did not move around. He sat on the sofa and closed his eyes to rest. He spread out his telekinesis in all directions and carefully scanned the entire second floor. Strangely, there was nothing suspicious here. In this situation, he knew that he could only wait patiently. After an unknown amount of time, Luo Bin and a few other people in white coats suddenly shouted from the control panel in the distance. There it is, detected it. Position 2D56, 3MC9, B3. Confirmed. Energy value 5L. What was going on? Chinyu could not help but look at the control panel. The few statisticians were shouting even louder. Each of them had a red glow on their faces, as if they had made an important discovery. Quick, transmit it. Can it be transmitted in? The fluctuation is too small. I'll try my best. This time, even Ding Meng opened his eyes. He saw a white dot appear out of nowhere in the middle of the hall. Chinyu almost thought that it was the activation of a musical image transmission. Who knew that this would flicker and feel very unstable? This was obviously not a musical image transmission. She could only sense that it was a strange energy fluctuation. As for where this fluctuation was coming from, she could not detect it. It was probably related to this group of statisticians. It's transmitted in. Someone shouted excitedly. The dot in the middle of the hall was no longer flickering. It gradually became brighter and clearer. Clearly, it had stabilized. Then, a strange scene appeared. The dot seemed to be expanding. Just like a star vortex in space, it produced streaks of light that spread in all directions. It was really the form of a nebula at the beginning of the universe. Chinyu was also dumbfounded. She had never seen this phenomenon before and could not explain it. Ding Meng, who was next to her, glanced at the miniature star vortex. Then, he turned his head away and closed his eyes to rest. Tell everyone to come up quickly. The conveyor belt is about to take shape, Luo Bin shouted. Immediately, a statistician madly pressed buttons on the control panel, and the entire workstation immediately rang with an urgent alarm. The response from the lower levels was also very fast. After a series of footsteps, more than 20 soldiers wearing battle armor rumbled as they ran up. At this moment, the bright star vortex had expanded to the size of a coffee table. It did not look like it was going to stop anytime soon. Chinyu wondered what kind of conveyor belt this was. Just as everyone was waiting with bated breath, the bright star vortex suddenly flickered. Then it suddenly dimmed. Before the statisticians could exclaim, the star vortex shrank into the shape of a dot. The dot flickered again and then disappeared. The fluctuation also disappeared. It was a situation where it had completely disappeared. Aya! Luo Bin seemed to be pounding his chest and stamping his feet. What's going on? Someone was already answering. I don't know. This has never happened before. Luo Bin said, Did you not control the transmitter properly? That person looked very wronged. How is that possible, old Luo? I've done it so many times. Luo Bin thought for a moment and said, Let's change the position and try again. With this order, Chinyu realized that the entire workstation was drifting towards the depths of the red cloud. They probably had to change locations to capture the mysterious fluctuation again. Turning her head, she realized that Ding Meng was still resting despite all the commotion. She could not help but say, Hey, young master, you, wake up. Ding Meng did not even open his eyes. Don't disturb my rest. Chinyu stared at Ding Meng suspiciously. You must know what's going on, right? Right? Ding Meng sighed. You're asking the wrong person. You should be asking those statisticians. Chinyu said coldly. I'm afraid they don't even know what's going on. Ding Meng said helplessly, If even they don't know what's going on, then it's even more impossible for me to know. This was obviously a lie. Not only did he know what was going on, but he was also even more surprised. This was because the star vortex that had just appeared was a divine light singularity. However, the fluctuation from this singularity was very weak. It felt like an embryonic form and was far less powerful than the singularities he had encountered on Madison and the Rainbow Planet. When the singularity expanded into a star vortex, the divine light bracer immediately reacted strangely. Ding Ming even realized that the bracer was vibrating on its own. It was just that everyone had been distracted by the changes in the singularity back then, so they did not notice anything strange about him. When Ding Ming activated his origin energy to control the bracer's vibration, the singularity seemed to have immediately sensed his presence and quickly faded away. Ding Ming found it hard to explain this situation. The singularity seemed to be very afraid of him, but it was more like it was sending him some kind of message. Of course, Ding Ming knew that the Mao Xing civilization's divine light technology was absolutely harmless to him. So all he needed to do now was to close his eyes and continue to wait patiently. Qianyu felt very helpless when she saw him not opening his eyes and remaining indifferent. There was definitely something wrong with this guy, but he just refused to say anything. The workstation continued to drift in the red mist. After flying for about 4 hours, Luo Bin's exclamation rang out again. This time, his tone was not only shocked but also excited. Got it, got it, got it. Quick, quick, quick. The statisticians were operating in a flurry again. They were probably guiding a new wave. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. This time, a total of 16 bright spots appeared out of thin air in the center of the hall, emitting extremely dazzling rays of light. Luo Bin fell to his knees with a thud. He looked so excited that it was as if he had married 16 wives at the same time. Oh my God, we've struck it rich this time. Qianyu could not help but ask, Elder Luo, what's going on? Luo Bin said excitedly, Secretary Qian, at most, 2 conveyor belts have appeared at our workstation. I didn't expect to be so lucky this time. There are actually 16 conveyor belts. This is a big discovery. If CEO Ling knows about it, he'll definitely be happy. Oh no, Qian Yu's heart sank. Could this have attracted Ling Xingqi's main body here? Chapter 674. With the reappearance of the singularities, the entire workstation was bustling with activity. A group of fully armed soldiers ran up to the upper levels. Qianyu asked curiously, Can these conveyor belts transport people? Luo Bin patiently explained, Secretary Qian, you see the red mist outside, right? They are a very strange mixture of substances that can often gather strange waves. After these waves are transmitted by our workstations, they will form this kind of conveyor belt. According to the people who have been there before, the new energy material was found inside. Qianyu asked, Where is the destination? Luo Bin shrugged. Sorry, I really don't know. Anyway, some said they were in the grasslands, some said they were in the mountains, and some said they were in the spaceship's tunnel. Everyone seemed to have been sent to different places. Looks like the conveyor belts are very unstable. Qianyu quietly analyzed. Luo Bin said, We have 28 workstations nearby. It's rare to encounter such good luck. At this time, the 16 spirals were slowly expanding. Ding Ming had opened his eyes at some point and was carefully scanning the singularities. When each whirlpool expanded to 50 square meters, the armored soldiers entered each whirlpool one after another and disappeared. Clearly, they had been teleported away. In less than 3 minutes, more than 50 soldiers had entered the spirals. There were only a few people left on the lower levels. Qianyu took a deep breath and quietly walked forward. She was about to choose a spiral to enter when Ding Ming's voice came. This is not a lack of stability. Qianyu and Luo Bin turned their heads in surprise. Ding Ming slowly walked over. Elder Luo, if I'm not wrong, these soldiers are always replenished by the transport ships sent from Tujing Base, right? Luo Bin was a statistician, so he obviously did not know much about schemes. People in the field of technology did not know how to beat around the bush. Yes, what about it? Ding Ming said, After they enter, very few people come out, right? Luo Bin nodded. Very few people come out. Some of them are not even from this B3 workstation. They belong to other workstations. Ding Ming also nodded. That's right. This explains why Perry Base is so heavily guarded. Qianyu looked at Ding Ming in shock. She could understand the hidden meaning behind Ding Ming's words. Why were the workstations filled with war sovereign soldiers? It was because the Starry Rainbow Corporation didn't want those war sages and warlords to risk their lives in unknown areas. They knew that once they entered the conveyor belt, it was very likely that they wouldn't be able to return. This was a classic example of wanting to reap benefits but not daring to take risks. You know where the conveyor belts are, right? Qian Yu quietly asked. Ding Ming did not answer her question. Of course, he would not be so bored as to release his telekinesis string to see Qian Yu's true appearance. While Ding Ming was doing these little tricks, Qian Yu was not idling either. At this moment, the Dark Queen's various detection systems scanned Ding Ming from head to toe. In her vision, Ding Ming became a blur of light and shadow. All kinds of data and patterns were being generated. In the past, the database would have provided a comparison target in at most 3 seconds, revealing the person's true appearance. But this time, after 10 seconds, the blur was still a blur. It was not analyzed at all. A big red question mark appeared in her vision. The system voice said, "Unable to be realized." Unable to be realized. Qian Yu was shocked. You're not bad yourself. Even my baby can't figure out your true appearance. I admire you. Ding Ming waved his hand. Forget it. Take care of yourself. Only then did Qian Yu realize that Ding Ming was still half naked. You're not afraid of poison? Of course, Ding Ming wasn't afraid of poison. He bent down and grabbed some mud in his hand, rubbing it with interest. It looked like mud, but it was actually a puddle of thick mucus like a ball of yellowish-green sputum. The four-eyed man and the hairy man, the two old smokers, often spat this stuff everywhere. Qian Yu retched again. Because of the armor, her sensitivity and senses were improved. Forget it. I don't admire you anymore. You're really disgusting. Ding Ming threw the puddle of mucus away and muttered, a strange poison that devours the world. Its level is not low. Qian Yu looked at the data in her vision. What is this place? The detection system on the armor could sense up to 5 kilometers away and effectively simulate it. This cave was not a cave, but a dead end. The cave extended forward, but it had no end. Ding Ming sighed deeply. If I said I don't know, would you believe me? Qian Yu looked at Ding Ming angrily. Are you okay now? Ding Ming looked her up and down. Who are you? Please mind your words and actions. Don't look around. Qian Yu glared at him. Where are you looking? Have you never seen a woman before? Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. Fine. I just haven't seen you before. May I ask who you are? Who am I? Qian Yu was so angry that she laughed. You don't even know who I am? You're so ignorant. No wonder you're not famous. As she spoke, she opened her palm. A pink sunflower-shaped chip appeared in her hand and disappeared. Now you know who I am, right? Qian Yu said proudly. She didn't know that she had shown off in vain. Ding Ming and Liang each shook their heads. They looked at her as if she was an idiot. Liang looked at Ding Ming and asked hesitantly, is she a famous person in the Federation or an expert from the Empire? Ding Ming shook his head. His face was blank. I don't know. Other than being tall and strong, I don't see anything special about her. I've never seen her name card before. Fine. You win. Qian Yu was speechless. She said helplessly, listen carefully. I'll only say it once. My name is Isendale. Ding Ming was shocked. The one who ranked second on the Holy Grail Federation's warrior ranking list? Wrong. Isendale's face was serious. She quickly corrected him. It's the one who ranked fourth on the Holy Grail Federation's goddess ranking list. This time, it was Ding Ming's turn to be speechless. Is there a difference? There's a big difference. Isendale said confidently. I still have room for improvement on the goddess ranking list, but there's almost no room for improvement on the warrior ranking list. Ding Ming could only lower his eyelids again. It was said that one's appearance was innate, but one's strength was acquired through practice. Could it be that one's appearance could be improved, but one's martial arts would remain stagnant forever? He really couldn't understand the logic of these women. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.